From the time I was a little girl, all I ever wanted was a simple life. Not to ace exams at an Ivy League university, not to become a highly admired socialite, and certainly not to bring honor to the prestigious Taggart military family. My dream was to one day escape Jackson Taggart, then sleep straight through until noon, eat fried chicken, drink bubble tea, and sprawl on the sofa binge-watching rom-coms until I had dark circles under my eyes, and no one would dare to frown or tell me what to do. Sadly, that dream was crushed for 18 years. The person responsible was my brother, in name only. Jackson Taggart, 5 in the morning. I'd still be curled up in bed, dreaming of marrying a ridiculously wealthy husband. Then, the reveille would blare outside my window. 3 seconds later, 2 soft taps would sound on my bedroom door, not heavy, not light, but enough to make my soul jump awake before my body. Kylie, down to the field. His deep voice cut through the door, colder than a bucket of ice water, and just as effective at waking me up. I pulled the covers over my head, pretending to be dead. Silence outside the door lasted exactly 10 seconds. Then his voice came again. "If you don't come down, today's run is 2 miles longer." I shot out of bed like a startled fish, grumbling through gritted teeth as I changed. Jackson Taggart. When you get married, I swear I'll give your wife a survival guide. Page 1 will say, run while you still can. Ever since my mother passed away young, and my father, General Taggart, was constantly away at the base, Jackson became almost solely responsible for me, from my meals to my bedtime. He was only 26, already a major, tall and lean, handsome, with an air of cold detachment that made girls blush when he was out in public. But to me, he wasn't a major with a bright future. He was a nightmare in a uniform. If I ran too slow, he'd make me restart. If I snuck spicy food, he'd confiscate my entire snack stash. When I scored a 49 on a math test, he sat across from me for 3 hours straight, his gaze as sharp as a knife, forcing me to correct every single wrong answer. For years, the one thing I repeated most often in my heart was, "God, please give me a different brother." To my surprise, God actually seemed to listen. On my 18th birthday, a strange family came to the Taggart household. The man wore a gray suit, his expression stern. The woman beside him had red, teary eyes, and choked back a sob the moment she saw me. Behind them stood a girl in a white dress, delicate as a porcelain doll, clutching the hem of her skirt, her eyes nervously scanning the spacious living room. General Taggart sat at the head of the table, his face unusually grave. Jackson stood by the window, back ramrod straight, his gaze fixed on me, so deep I couldn't read it. Several lab reports lay on the coffee table. I heard the man speak, his voice hoarse. "Kylie, you are our daughter, a Harrison. There was a mix-up at the hospital 18 years ago. You and Willow were swapped." The air in the living room grew heavy, thick like lead. Mrs. Harrison choked back tears, wanting to hug me but afraid I'd pull away. The girl in the white dress bowed her head, her eyes red-rimmed. I looked at her, then back at General Taggart. He slowly sighed. "Kylie, this is true. Willow is my biological daughter. If I were any ordinary girl, I would have probably fainted from shock. Tears streaming down my face, clutching my chest and questioning my fate. But in my head, a burst of fireworks exploded. The prestigious Harrison family. No early morning drills. No Jackson checking my homework. No 30 push-ups for skipping a run. My dream of a lazy, carefree life was finally emerging. I painstakingly forced my lips not to curl too much, putting on a sufficiently polite, sad face. "So, I'm supposed to move to the Harrisons' missus." Harrison immediately nodded, tears falling harder. "My sweet girl, your parents lost you for 18 years. From now on, your mother will make it up to you. I promise." Make it up, those 2 words sounded like music to my ears. I could almost see a pile of beautiful dresses, designer bags, black cards, and sparkling lazy mornings waving at me. The reunion was incredibly emotional, at least for everyone else. I was just trying to keep myself from whistling on the spot. as soon as it was over. I dashed upstairs to pack my bags. My closet burst open. Pajamas, dress, comic books, the few packs of beef jerky hidden in my drawer. Everything was thrown into my suitcase with the speed of someone fleeing a disaster. I hummed softly as I packed. Lazy life. Here I come. A soft knock suddenly sounded on the door behind me. My humming caught in my throat. Jackson stood in the doorway. He was still in his crisp military uniform. His collar immaculate, his handsome face so cold that the joy inside me instinctively shriveled. His gaze swept over the open suitcase on my bed. That happy, I blinked, deciding to tell him half the truth. Not exactly happy. Just a bit surprised, a bit overwhelmed, and a bit eager to adapt to my new identity as soon as possible. Jackson looked at me for a long time, his eyes making me feel guilty, like I'd just been caught sneaking snacks from the kitchen. He stepped into the room, stopping in front of me. You really want to go? I clutched a jacket to my chest, giving a strained laugh. That's a weird question, isn't it? They're my biological parents. Besides, the Harrisons isn't that far. I can still come back to visit General Taggart and you. If anything comes up, the last word had barely left my lips when Jackson's expression chilled several degrees. I quickly added, of course, if you miss me too much. You can also come visit. But remember to let me know in advance. Just don't kick down my door at 5 a.m. to make me go for a run. He remained silent. The once familiar room suddenly felt suffocating. After a long moment, he picked up the jacket I had haphazardly folded, refolded it neatly, and placed it in the suitcase. His movements were as practiced as they had been for years. I watched his long, slender fingers, and a strange feeling welled up inside me. It was as if I wasn't just leaving a house, but something very important. But that feeling flashed and was immediately crushed by the promise of sleeping in until noon. Jackson zipped up my suitcase for me, his voice flat. Once you're there, don't cause trouble, I immediately retorted. I'm a well-behaved person. How could I cause trouble? He looked at me with an expression that conveyed zero trust. I cleared my throat, adding softly, at most, someone else will start it. The corner of his mouth twitched, but he didn't smile. Downstairs, Mrs. Harrison was calling my name. I pulled my suitcase past him, stopping at the door. For some reason, a lump formed in my throat. Jackson. He looked over. I wanted to say something emotional, like, thank you for raising me. Thank you for always protecting me. I'll visit often. But the words that came out were, that math textbook in my desk drawer, don't send it to the Harrisons? We're done. Jackson looked at me, his eyes darkening. Text me when you get out of the car. I pulled my suitcase and ran as fast as if he might change his mind. The Harrisons' car slowly pulled away from the Taggart gate. Through the rear window, I saw Jackson standing on the steps, his tall figure casting a long shadow in the afternoon sun. He didn't chase after me, didn't wave, just stood there watching me drive away. My chest suddenly felt a little hollow, but I quickly slapped myself in the heart. Kylie, snap out of it. A new life is waiting for you. No more running. No more military regulations. No more being managed by a cold-faced major. From today on, I was a free-spirited heiress. I hugged my backpack, happily looking out the window. At that moment, I had no idea that the Harrisons' door didn't lead to a lazy paradise. It led straight to a gilded cage, even more terrifying than Jackson Taggart's drill field. The Harrisons' car pulled into the lakeside estate just as dusk was settling. I sat in the car, eyes glued to the neatly trimmed hedges outside the window, silently marveling. Money really talks. Even the bushes looked like they'd been to etiquette school. The ornate iron gates swung open, and the car rolled down a white gravel driveway, flanked by lush green lawns stretching to a grand fountain. The Harrison mansion was ablaze with lights, so luxurious it made me almost forget to breathe. Mrs. Harrison sat beside me, gripping my hand. Kylie, this is your home now. Just tell me whatever you want. Don't be shy. I tried to maintain a docile expression, but the corners of my mouth couldn't help but turn up. Anything I want. Then first, can I sleep until noon? That question was cut short by Mr. Harrison, sitting in the front seat, with a very serious statement. Starting tomorrow, I'll have private tutors come to the house. You've been away from the Harrisons for many years. Etiquette, social graces, music, and art. You'll need to relearn everything from scratch. My smile froze. I slowly turned to look at him. Relearn everything from scratch, mister. Harrison nodded. His voice filled with the responsibility of a father who had just found his biological daughter. You are the eldest daughter of the Harrison family. From now on, you'll represent our family's reputation. These basic things cannot be overlooked. Basic music, art, etiquette, social graces. Just hearing it made it sound anything but basic. I had just escaped Jackson Taggart's drill field. Barely had time to embrace my lazy life. And now I was thrown straight into heiress boot camp. That night, I lay on a princess canopy bed so soft it could swallow a person whole. Staring wide-eyed at the coffered ceiling, the room had a wall-sized closet, a vanity overflowing with cosmetics, and even an en-suite bathroom as big as my old bedroom at the Taggarts. Everything was beautiful. Everything was expensive. Everything made me want to roll around in it 3 times. But when the butler, Mr. Jenkins, smiled and handed me a schedule for tomorrow, half my soul immediately floated away. 6:30 a.m. Wake up. 2:00 a.m. Breakfast. 18:02 a.m. Etiquette. 10:00. Flower arranging. 4:00 p.m. Piano. 3:00 p.m. Painting. 7:00 p.m. Social dancing. I stared at the paper, my voice trembling. Mr. Jenkins, are you trying to kill my sleep? The butler still smiled kindly. Miss Kylie, you're joking. Mrs. Harrison thought you might not be accustomed to things yet, so she arranged a very light schedule. Light. Those 2 words stabbed me in the heart. It turns out I had been wrong to blame Jackson. At least he only made me run and study. The Harrisons wanted to train me into a decorative vase, capable of playing music, smiling, walking gracefully, and bowing at the correct angle. On the first day of etiquette class, the teacher made me balance a thick book on my head and walk from one end of the living room to the other. I took 3 steps, and the book crashed to the floor. The teacher frowned. Miss Kylie, your back must be straight, your neck supple, your steps light. I bent down to pick up the book, muttering softly, my feet have a strong bond with gravity. I'm afraid I can't be light. The teacher was silent for 3 seconds, then added another book. During the flower arranging class, I was asked to coordinate colors with an elegant emotion. I looked at the pile of flowers on the table and seriously chose the 3 reddest, biggest blooms, sticking them straight into the vase. The teacher asked me the theme. I replied without hesitation, rage of a sleep-deprived teenager. The teacher slammed her scissors down on the table, her face turning pale. In the afternoon, during piano class, my fingers were stiff as if I'd been carrying sandbags all day. The piano teacher patiently corrected each note. I, just as patiently, played every note wrong. At the end of the first day, Mrs. Harrison sat beside me in the living room, both heartbroken and worried. Kylie, are you very tired? But you must bear with it a little longer. That way, you won't be laughed at parties later. I looked into her red-rimmed eyes. A sigh caught in my throat, unable to speak it. She genuinely wanted to make it up to me. It's just that her way of making amends felt a lot like legal torture. I reluctantly nodded. I understand. Mom, Mrs. Harrison immediately brightened, sending for a plate of pastries. I had just picked up a fork when Mr. Harrison emerged from his study. You shouldn't eat too many sweets in the evening. You have a gown fitting tomorrow. You need to maintain your figure. The fork in my hand froze in midair. I looked at the rich strawberry pastry in front of me, tears almost falling. Jackson only confiscated my snacks. The Harrisons confiscated my joy of living. 5 days later, I was taken to my first social gala as a true Harrison heiress. Mrs. Harrison personally chose a light blue, off-the-shoulder, cinched-waist evening gown for me. It was beautiful, but so tight I had to calculate every breath. Before we entered the ballroom, she gently instructed, Kylie, You just need to smile and speak sparingly. Your father and I are here. Don't be afraid. I obediently nodded. Speak sparingly. That part was easy. As long as no one provoked me. The ballroom glittered brightly. Soft music played, and the scent of perfume and wine mingled in the air. The Harrisons were quickly drawn away by several guests for greetings. I grabbed a glass of fruit juice, intending to quietly find a secluded corner to breathe. But I was stopped by a group of socialites. The girl in the middle wore a red dress, her chin held high, sizing me up from head to toe as if I were a defective product. You're the real heiress the Harrisons just welcomed back. Right, I smiled. Exactly as my etiquette teacher had taught me. Hello. She covered her mouth and chuckled softly. I heard you grew up in a military family? No wonder your posture is as stiff as a wooden post. Such a beautiful dress is wasted on you. The girls behind her immediately giggled. Another chimed in. Exactly. The fake heiress's Willow used to play piano, paint, and speak so gently. But you? No matter how I look at it, you seem more like a bodyguard than a lady. The juice in my hand trembled slightly. I must be patient, I told myself. Mrs. Harrison said to speak sparingly. The girl in the red dress stepped closer, deliberately lowering her voice, but loud enough for everyone to hear. Some things, you know, blood ties might not be enough to fix. A country bumpkin in a silk gown is still a country bumpkin. I sighed. It wasn't that I wasn't trying. She just chose her own ending. A second later, the orange fruit juice in my hand traced a perfect arc in the air, landing precisely on the chest of her red dress. The entire group shrieked, and the music seemed to pause. The girl in the red dress stared, trembling, pointing at me. You dare splash me. I placed the empty glass on a passing waiter's tray and smiled very politely. My apologies. My hands are used to carrying sandbags, not holding delicate glasses. Her face flushed with rage. I took half a step forward, my voice still gentle. And another thing, next time you want to call someone a country bumpkin, remember to stand a bit farther away. Country bumpkins bite hard. You know, the air around us fell completely silent. Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, hearing the commotion, rushed over, seeing the girl's soaked dress. Mr. Harrison's face immediately darkened. Kylie, what have you done, Mrs. Harrison, equally flustered, pulled my arm. This girl. Why would you cause a scene at a party like this? I opened my mouth to explain, but looking around, all eyes were on me. Astonishment, mockery, disdain. No one cared what had just been said to me. They only saw me splashing a drink and embarrassing the Harrison family. Mr. Harrison apologized profusely to the girl's family, then took me home that very night. In the car, he scolded me in a cold voice. Do you know how many people were watching the Harrison family tonight, no matter what anyone said? You shouldn't have gotten physical. Family reputation is more important than your momentary anger. Mrs. Harrison sat beside him, sighing, her eyes red. Kylie, I know you feel wronged, but you have to learn patience. You're a girl. Don't always be so aggressive. I looked at my reflection in the car window, the beautiful light blue dress, my carefully styled hair, my exquisitely made-up face. Everything clearly screamed heiress. But in my heart, I felt a strange coldness. If I were at the Taggarts, Jackson would have asked who provoked me first. Then he'd coldly deal with them and come back to scold me for not choosing an angle where the drink wouldn't splash his uniform. Thinking of that, my nose stung. I turned my face to the window, forcing down the lump in my throat. High society wasn't a paradise. It was just a gilded cage. And I, a lazy fish who had just jumped out of Jackson Taggart's iron claws, had fallen straight into the Harrison's steamer pot before I even had a chance to rejoice. After the party, which I had turned into a fruit juice crime scene, the Harrisons went into level 1 alert. Mr. Harrison added 2 extra etiquette classes each day. Mrs. Harrison gently cut off my bubble tea, saying sugar was bad for my skin. Mr. Jenkins looked at me with a mix of pity and wariness, as if I wasn't the newly returned heiress, but a lit firecracker placed in the living room. I lay sprawled on my study desk, watching my etiquette teacher place 3 more books in front of me. My fragile soul about to float away. Miss Kylie, Today we will practice our sitting posture. I looked at the impossibly straight-backed chair in front of me and seriously asked, "Is there a lying down pose?" "Professor, I'm great at that." The teacher did not smile. 30 minutes later, I was punished by sitting ramrod straight, with a sheet of paper clamped between my knees, a book balanced on my head, and my hands neatly placed on my lap. This posture lasted a full 40 minutes. By the time I stood up, my legs were so numb I almost called an ambulance. Even more terrifying news was still to come. That night at dinner, Mr. Harrison put down his fork and said in a very calm tone, "This weekend, the Sterlings will be joining us for dinner. Ethan Sterling will be there too." I was chewing on a piece of broccoli and almost bit my tongue off. "Ethan Sterling." Harrison paused slightly, then gently explained, "He's your childhood fiancé, our two families. The Harrisons and Sterlings were close back then. When your mother was pregnant with you, we joked about an arranged marriage. I never thought the Sterlings would remember all these years later." The broccoli in my mouth instantly lost all flavor. Fiancé. I had just escaped Jackson Taggart's math problems, and the Harrisons had handed me a marriage test. No way. My lazy life can't die young like this. I put down my chopsticks, looking earnestly at Mr. and Mrs. Harrison. "Mom, Dad, I'm only 18. The flower of our nation hasn't even bloomed yet. And you're forcing me into someone else's vase. Isn't that a little cruel, Mr.?" Harrison frowned. "It's just a meeting. If you two find each other suitable, we can discuss marriage after you graduate." I really wanted to say I was more suitable for my bed, but seeing Mrs. Harrison's expectant gaze, my protest was swallowed. That weekend, Ethan Sterling arrived right on time. He wore a white tuxedo, his hair so slicked back a fly would probably slip, and a faint scent of expensive cologne clung to him. He was handsome, but in a porcelain doll sort of way. So fragile, I worried he'd blow away in a strong breeze. The moment he sat on the sofa, he observed me from head to toe. That gaze reminded me of my etiquette teacher checking my sitting posture. This isn't good. This guy and I are definitely not from the same planet. Ethan Sterling took a sip of tea and slowly spoke. "Kylie Harrison, I hear you've only just returned to the family and still have many rules to learn." I offered a fake smile. "I hear you do too." "Ethan," he raised an eyebrow slightly, "you seem to pick apart people the moment you meet them. I guess you haven't quite mastered proper manners either." The air in the living room stiffened. Mrs. Harrison looked at me in alarm. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. "A warning." Ethan Sterling set his teacup down, the smile on his lips fading. "I'm only speaking the truth. If our families truly form an alliance, you'll represent not just the Harrisons but the Sterlings as well. Your posture is too casual, and your conversation isn't soft enough." I looked down at myself. Today, to save Mrs. Harrison's face, I had worn a white dress, sat ramrod, straight for 10 minutes, and hadn't even dared to cross my legs. And he still complained. Ethan Sterling continued. "Also, your hands have calluses. Girls should take better care of themselves. After we're married, I don't expect my wife to look like she just stepped off a drill field." The cold teacup on the table was half an inch from my hand. I looked at it. It looked at me. It was fate. I picked up the cup and calmly splashed its contents onto Ethan Sterling's pale face. Amidst the collective gasp, he sat frozen in place. The tea streamed down his chin and soaked into his shirt collar. I placed the cup back in its spot and sincerely asked, "Are you awake now, Ethan?" Sterling trembled, pointing at me. Are you looking for a wife or a display doll? My hands have calluses, then you can carry your own 5-gallon water jugs from now on. I'd hate for your delicate hands to break." After saying that, I stood up and politely bowed to the stunned Sterling parents next to him. "My apologies. Mr. and Mrs. Sterling, I might be a bit uncouth, but your son and I are not compatible. If we married, I'm sure I'd splash tea on him 8 times a day. It would be a waste of water." Mr. Harrison's face turned livid with anger. "Kylie Harrison." I grabbed my purse and walked out. "I'm going out for some fresh air. You all can continue talking about family honor." Outside the mansion, I realized I had been too impulsive and forgotten my jacket. The night wind bit, giving me goosebumps. But I'd rather run 3 miles under Jackson Taggart's command than go back into that living room and apologize. I walked along the lakeside road, feeling increasingly sorry for myself. At the Taggarts, if I did something wrong, I'd get scolded, punished, forced to write a self-criticism. But Jackson never let outsiders trample all over me. Here, it seemed everything could be covered by the phrase family honor and used to suppress me. After walking for a long time, my feet ached unbearably. I found an empty bus stop and plopped down on the bench. I looked down at the cute little leather shoes on my feet, wanting to take them off and throw them in the lake. Harris, my foot. I missed my old sneakers. Just as I was wallowing in self-pity, a gasping sound reached me from a distance. I looked up. A girl was pulling a suitcase almost half her size, a military backpack slung over her shoulder, her hair disheveled, her sportswear covered in mud. She was stumbling towards the bus stop. The moment she arrived, she dropped her suitcase with a thud and collapsed onto the other end of the bench. We looked at each other simultaneously, and the air froze. I pointed at her. "Willow Harrison." She pointed back at me, her voice choked with surprise. "Taggart." "No. Kylie Harrison." We looked at each other's pathetic appearances, simultaneously falling silent for 3 seconds. Then I asked, "Were you chased by a dog?" Willow's eyes reddened, her voice trembling. "Worse than a dog. Your brother made me run 3 miles cross-country, then learn to assemble and disassemble a model rifle, and then read military regulations all night. I couldn't take it anymore." I was speechless. "Ah, yes. Jackson Taggart style." Willow looked me up and down. My dust-covered white dress, wind-blown hair, and a face just as disheveled as hers. "And you, is the Harrison family not good?" I gave a bleak laugh. "Oh, it's wonderful. So wonderful that I just splashed tea on my future fiancé and ran away from home." Willow's eyes widened. After a long moment, she quietly gave me a thumbs up. "You're so brave." I looked at her military backpack. "You're no less. Daring to run from Jackson Taggart. You're a true heroine." The two of us, failures in this house-swapping experiment, looked at each other, suddenly feeling a bit like kindred spirits in misery. The pale yellow streetlights cast their glow on the empty bus stop. Willow hugged her knees, speaking softly. "General Taggart was actually very kind to me. But I'm terrified of your brother. One look from him, and I wanted to write myself up." I nodded, completely understanding. "Congratulations. That's a perfectly normal reaction." She snorted with laughter, tears still clinging to her lashes. Just then, blinding headlights suddenly swept past. A familiar military vehicle stopped right at the curb. My heart leaped into my throat. The car door opened. Jackson Taggart stepped out, his uniform crisp and cold, his tall figure seeming to carry the night behind him. I instinctively sat up straight. This is it. I'm caught in the act. If he sees me wandering around like this after running away from home, he'll mock me from here to kingdom come. But Jackson only gave me a very dismissive glance. Then he walked straight towards Willow. His voice deepened, carrying a tone of urgency I'd never clearly heard from him before. "Are you hurt?" Willow looked up, tears immediately falling. "I just want to go back to the Harrisons." "I can't take it anymore." Jackson paused slightly, then bent down to pick up her backpack. "Get in the car first." I sat beside them, chilled to the bone. The night wind blew fiercely. But what bothered me more wasn't the cold. It was the way his eyes had swept past me just now, as if I were a stranger. For 18 years, no matter how much trouble I caused, the first person to drag me home was always Jackson. Now he walked past me. A lump formed in my throat. My rationality told me not to embarrass myself. But my tears didn't listen. I stood up abruptly, my voice cracking. "Jackson Taggart, don't you see I'm sitting here too?" His back stiffened. He turned around, his cold eyes falling on my face. "Miss Harrison, haven't the Harrisons sent someone to look for you?" Those few gentle words. And my heart felt like someone was squeezing it. I bit my lip, tears falling harder. "What did you just call me?" Jackson looked at me, his expression unwavering. "You've returned to your proper home. You should get used to your new identity." I knew I was being utterly pathetic. But in that moment, all the grievances at the Harrisons, all the mockery at the party, all the suffocating rules coalesced in my throat. I rushed forward and hugged his waist tightly. the familiar faint scent of mint on his uniform, making my tears burst forth. I don't want to get used to it. I don't want to be Miss Harrison anymore. And I definitely don't want to marry that rich kid. Jackson's body stiffened. His hand, which had been about to push me away, froze it in midair. His voice suddenly deepened. Marry whom I buried my face in his shirt. Sobbing. Ethan Sterling. The Harrisons want me to meet my childhood fiancé. He complained my posture wasn't pretty, and my hands had calluses. I splashed tea on him and ran away. The air around us suddenly turned terribly cold. Jackson gripped my shoulders, pulling me away from his chest. His eyes darkened, each word forced out between clenched teeth. The Harrisons want to marry you off. I was so scared by his expression that I forgot to cry. It's just a meeting first. Jackson looked at me for a long time. Then he took off his military jacket and threw it over me, covering my freezing shoulders. Get in the car, I asked sniffly. Are you taking me back to the Harrisons? He turned and opened the car door, his voice so cold, no one dared to object. No. Then where are we going? Jackson glanced at me. Back to the Taggarts first. I'll get to the bottom of this fiancé business. For some reason, my heart felt both heavy and light at the same time. Willow sat in the back seat, hugging her military backpack, interjecting softly. Can I go back to the Harrisons? Jackson replied flatly. No. Willow immediately sagged. I pulled Jackson's jacket tighter around me, turning to look at her. Suddenly, I felt like we were two pathetic fish being tossed between two ponds. The military vehicle sped into the night. I secretly peeked at Jackson's cold profile. He still wasn't gentle with me, but the jacket on my shoulders was so warm enough to make my heart, which he had just hurt, start to act up again. The military vehicle stopped in front of the Taggart gate. Willow, clutching her backpack, looked as if she were about to be led to the gallows. I sat in the passenger seat, gripping Jackson Taggart's jacket. My thoughts so chaotic I couldn't even understand myself. Just a while ago at the bus stop, he had called me Miss Harrison. Those two subtle words stung more than running 3 miles cross-country this morning. Mr. Jenkins, the butler, opened the door, delighted to see us return together. Master Jackson. Miss Kylie. Miss Willow. Jackson cut him off coldly. Prepare a room for Willow. Her training schedule is cut in half tomorrow. Willow looked as if she had received a royal pardon, her eyes immediately lighting up. Really, he gave her a look. But you still have to read military regulations. The light in her eyes flickered out. I almost snorted with laughter. But thinking of my own situation, the laugh caught in my throat. Jackson walked past me. I lightly tugged his sleeve. What about me? He stopped, his gaze falling to my hand. I quickly let go, pretending to be calm. Aren't you going to ask about Ethan Sterling anymore? His face was still as cold as ever, his voice devoid of emotion. You're part of the Harrison family now. It's not convenient for me to interfere too deeply. I stood frozen in place. Not convenient to interfere times before. He managed everything from whether my socks were matched to whether eating too much spice would give me a stomachache. Now, just because I moved back to the Harrisons, he said it wasn't convenient. A wave of resentment surged in my chest. I nodded vaguely, pulling his jacket off my shoulders and handing it back to him. Well, sorry to trouble you. Major Taggart. With that, I turned and walked out. Jackson called my name from behind. Kylie. My steps faltered. He seemed to realize he had used my last name again. In that moment, the air in the grand hall grew cold. I didn't turn back. Major Taggart. You got the wrong name. I'm a Harrison now. The door closed, and the night wind rushed in, chilling me. I returned to the Harrisons in a pathetic state. Mr. Harrison was already waiting in the living room. Mrs. Harrison stood beside him, her eyes red. The moment she saw me, she wanted to step forward, but was stopped by Mr. Harrison's stern gaze. Where did you go? I lowered my gaze. Outside for some fresh air. By splashing tea on a guest and running away, his voice deepened. Kylie Harrison. You must remember your current identity. You are no longer the impulsive daughter who grew up in the Taggart household. Every word, every action you take is connected to the Harrisons. It's always identity, always reputation. I scoffed inwardly, but outwardly I meekly apologized. I understand. Mrs. Harrison took my hand. gently persuading me. Kylie, your father means well. Just try to temper your personality a little. Ethan Sterling might be a bit blunt, but his family background and character are very good. I looked up. So, Mom, you want me to marry him, Mrs.? Harrison choked. Mr. Harrison set his teacup down. We're just getting to know each other. If it's suitable, marriage, after you graduate, wouldn't be too soon. I looked at them, suddenly feeling very tired. Just a few days ago, I thought this place was paradise. Now, everything before me felt like a soft net, beautiful to look at, but suffocating when you touched it. I'm going to my room. Without waiting for their reply, I turned and left. From that night on, Jackson Taggart truly didn't come to find me anymore. My last text message to him, sent after I got out of the Harrison's car I'm home, remained unanswered. My phone was silent for a week. A month. Then, many months. Life at the Harrisons continued. I practiced etiquette until I could balance a book on my head and walk through the living room without it falling. I practiced piano until I could play a simple tune without making my teacher clutch her chest. I practiced social dancing until I no longer stepped on my partner's feet. The most miraculous thing was that Willow Harrison, and Ethan Sterling actually became a strange trio. The first time I saw Ethan after the tea splashing incident, he looked at me with resentment. Do you know how much that tuxedo cost me? I replied. No, but I'm sure it was enlightened by cold tea. He was so angry he gritted his teeth. Willow, standing nearby, quickly interceded, her voice as soft as cheesecake. How about I treat you both to bubble tea? Ethan looked at her, his anger immediately deflating by half. After a few more encounters like that, I quickly realized this rich kid was only unpleasant on the surface. He was actually quite loyal. He helped me skip flower arranging class, covered for me when I snuck spicy hot pot, and often sent study guides to Willow. Worried, Jackson would punish her by making her read military regulations. It quickly became clear to me that he liked Willow, and Willow would blush every time his name was mentioned. I happily watched their budding romance, temporarily forgetting about that annoying Jackson Taggart. Until one afternoon in the university library, Willow sat across from me, scrolling on her phone and sipping bubble tea, when she suddenly froze, her expression a bit awkward. I was sprawled on the table, copying notes, and lazily asked, "Did your brother make you write another self-criticism?" Willow shook her head. No, it seems like Jackson's on a blind date. The pencil in my hand scratched a long line on my notes. I shot my head up. Who's on a blind date, Jackson? She handed me her phone. On the screen was a message from the Taggart butler to her. The content was simple. Colonel Dalton is bringing his daughter over for dinner tonight. General Taggart wants you to come home if you have time. Colonel Dalton's daughter, Brooke Dalton. I had heard that name before. A military family heiress. Well-educated. Well-mannered. Raised on base from childhood, everyone said she and Jackson Taggart were a perfect match. My throat suddenly constricted. What did Jackson Taggart's blind date have to do with me? He wasn't my brother anymore. No, that's not right. He used times to be my brother. No, that's not right either. My mind was a tangled mess. By the time I regained my composure, I had sprung up, the chair scraping backward with a harsh sound. Willow looked alarmed, grabbing my arm. Kylie, where are you going? I grabbed my purse, gritting my teeth. Back to the Taggarts to borrow a book. Willow looked at the textbook lying right in front of me, weakly reminding me, "Your book is right here." I pretended not to hear. Half an hour later, I stood outside the Taggart gate. Mr. Jenkins's face lit up with joy the moment he saw me, almost shedding tears. "Miss Kylie, it's been so long since you visited." I tried to appear calm. "Mr. Jenkins, I just came back to pick up some old things." Mr. Jenkins smiled kindly, quickly opening the door for me. Voices carried from the living room. The moment I stepped in, I saw Brooke Dalton. She wore a cream-colored dress, her long hair tied back in a low ponytail. Sitting primly on the sofa, her gentle demeanor was exactly what older people loved most. Next to her was Jackson Taggart. He wore a black dress shirt, sleeves rolled up, his face as cold as ever, but he wasn't leaving. He was sitting with her. Brooke Dalton saw me first and smiled naturally. This must be Kylie. Right, Jackson mentioned you. Jackson called me by my first name so familiarly. Something sour bubbled up inside me, almost smoking. I forced out a polite smile. Hello, I just came back for some books. I hope I'm not interrupting. Jackson finally looked at me. His eyes were deep, but his voice was as flat as water. The Harrison heiress still remembers the way back here. I tightened my grip on my purse strap. It's my old home. How could I forget? My phone vibrated in my purse. It was Ethan Sterling. I looked at the screen, and a foolish but satisfying idea flashed through my mind. I answered, deliberately making my voice sweeter than usual. Ethan, are we still on for our date tonight? Okay. Same place. The other end of the line was silent for a second. Then Ethan Sterling yelled, are you crazy? I'm asking if you've seen Willow anywhere. She turned off her phone. I glanced at Jackson. He just lowered his eyes and sipped his tea, showing no reaction. My anger flared even more. I continued my act. Yes, I'll wear my prettiest dress. No going home until we're thoroughly tipsy. Ethan Sterling sputtered. Kylie Harrison. Did you take the wrong medicine? I hung up quickly. Brooke Dalton looked at me, a little surprised. You're still so young. Going to clubs isn't very safe. I smiled brightly. It's fine. My fiancé will be with me. Jackson Taggart set his teacup down, the ceramic clinking softly against the table, making my heart jump. He stood up. For a moment, I was almost certain he would scold me, coldly order me to cancel my date, or, as he used to, drag me by the collar back to my room to write a self-criticism. But he just walked over to Brooke Dalton, his voice deep. Let's go. I'll drive you home. Brooke Dalton smiled and stood up. Thank you. Jackson. Jackson. Another familiar way of calling him. Jackson didn't deny it. He just said flatly, yes, I'll be there tonight. The two walked past me. Jackson didn't stop, didn't ask, didn't interfere, didn't get angry. He just left a faint, cold scent of mint as he disappeared out the door. I stood in the spacious living room, my chest aching dully. Mr. Jenkins looked at me, wanting to speak, but holding back. I forced a smile, pretending to be casual. Mr. Jenkins, I guess I don't need to pick up my books after all. I must have misremembered. As I left the Taggart house, the night wind stung my eyes. I looked up at the dark sky, giving myself a self-deprecating laugh. Kylie Harrison, you're pathetic. He doesn't want to manage you anymore. So why do you keep running back to him? From the night I left the Taggart house in a pathetic state, I set a new rule for myself. I wouldn't remember Jackson Taggart. I wouldn't mention Jackson Taggart. And I wouldn't be curious about how things were progressing between Jackson Taggart and Brooke Dalton. The rule was clear, but its execution was a complete failure. Whenever Willow received a message from the Taggarts, my ears perked up faster than a hunting dog's. The moment she started to say, Jackson, I would pretend to be flipping through a book, but my eyes would be glued to her lips. Willow's skin would get goosebumps from my gaze. Kylie, just ask what you want to ask. I stiffly replied. Who wants to ask? I'm just studying lip movements to improve my social communication skills. Ethan Sterling, sitting nearby, immediately spat out his bubble tea. Your lip movements clearly spell out Jackson Taggart. I glared at him coldly. Do you want to be enlightened by bubble tea like that white tuxedo again? Ethan Sterling immediately hugged his cup and retreated behind Willow, softly complaining. Willow, she's threatening me again. Willow blushed, pushing him away. Ethan, behave. Watching the two of them, awkward yet sweet, I suddenly felt an emptiness in my heart. So this is what it's like to like someone. One extra glance from them, and your whole day brightens. What about me? Jackson Taggart didn't even bother to look at me anymore. Yet, he still made my heart feel like it was raining one moment and sunny the next. A week later was Jackson Taggart's birthday. I knew the date too well. From childhood, every year on his birthday, I was the most excited. When I was little, I drew crooked greeting cards. When I was a bit older, I bought ties, lighters, fountain pens. Every year, he'd accept them. And though he'd casually say, "Don't waste money," he always kept them carefully. This year, I was no longer a Taggart daughter. Logically, I didn't need to give him a gift. But when I passed by the mall and saw a men's watch in a display case, my feet automatically glued themselves to the floor. The watch face was black. The metal strap cold and shiny, simple but perfectly suited to his demeanor. I looked at the price, my heart aching. It was expensive enough to buy me bubble tea until I graduated college. The sales assistant smiled and asked, "Are you buying it for your boyfriend?" My face flushed. "No, for an acquaintance." Acquaintance. The word itself sounded detestable. In the end, I swiped almost all my savings and left the store clutching the gift box. That afternoon, I changed into a simple white dress, put on light makeup, and carried the gift box to the command center building. The guards at the gate recognized me and smiled the moment they saw me. "Kylie, haven't been here to see Major Taggart in a while. Have you?" I nodded, feeling a little sour inside. Before. I came and went as I pleased here. Everyone knew I was Jackson Taggart's little shadow. Now, coming back, it felt strangely unfamiliar. As soon as I stepped into the lobby, a firm arm slung around my shoulder. Well, if it isn't little Kylie. Haven't been causing trouble around headquarters lately? Have you? I turned and saw Sergeant Miller, grinning widely. He was Jackson Taggart's closest subordinate, and even more annoying than Ethan Sterling. I brushed his arm off. "Sergeant Miller, mind your words. I'm a properly trained lady now." Sergeant Miller looked me up and down, nodding. Nice dress. Nice hair. Nice face. Too bad your eyes are still the same as when you were 10 and got caught climbing a wall by Commander Taggart." I was speechless. He then winked. "Here to give the boss a birthday gift. Perfect timing." I was just about to ask if Kylie, now all grown up, would consider me as a brother-in-law. Before I could answer, the temperature behind me suddenly plummeted, and a cold voice rang out. "Sergeant Miller." Sergeant Miller immediately let go of my shoulder as if he'd been electrocuted. Jackson Taggart stood a few steps away, his uniform impeccable, his gaze fixed on Sergeant Miller's hand, which had just been on my shoulder. His face was expressionless, but his aura was enough to make anyone voluntarily dig their own grave. Sergeant Miller gave a strained laugh. "Boss, I was just joking." Jackson Taggart asked flatly, "Are this month's training reports done?" "No. Submit them before 6 p.m. One typo. 222. 10 extra laps." Sergeant Miller's face twisted, muttering softly. "How petty." Jackson Taggart glanced over. Sergeant Miller immediately stood at attention. "Reporting for duty." "Ist. I'm on it." He scrambled away so quickly his retreating back practically screamed survival. Only Jackson and I were left in the lobby. I held the gift box, my palms sweating. Jackson Taggart looked at me, his voice calm. "What brings you here?" I forced a smile. "It's your birthday today." He didn't reply. I held the gift box out to him. "Happy birthday." Jackson Taggart looked at the gift box, but didn't take it for a long time. The silence made my hand grow stiffer and stiffer. "If you don't like it, fine." Just as I was about to pull my hand back, he turned and walked towards the elevator. "Come into my office." I hesitated for a moment, then followed. His office was still the same as before. A large wooden desk, bookshelves, training maps on the wall, and the faint, cold scent of mint in the air. Only the corner of the desk where our shared photo used to sit was now empty. In that photo, I was 16, having just won a relay race at school. Jackson Taggart stood beside me, his face still cold, but his hand resting on my head. I was smiling so wide my eyes were mere slits. Now, it was gone. A lump formed in my throat. Jackson Taggart sat behind his desk, his gaze cold. "Birthday gifts aren't necessary. Miss Harrison should keep her distance from me." I clutched the gift box tighter. "Do you always have to talk to me like this?" He leaned back in his chair. "Otherwise." "What?" I slammed the gift box onto the desk. "We lived together for 18 years. I'm just giving you a birthday gift." "What's wrong with that?" Jackson Taggart looked at me, his eyes terrifyingly deep. "Appropriate for what relationship?" I froze. He stood up, slowly walking around the desk. "Little sister." His steps stopped in front of me. "The two Harrison heiresses are feeling nostalgic." so they're casually bestowing a little attention. I was so angry my eyes turned red. Jackson Taggart. Do you have to be so harsh? He leaned down, his cold breath close. Then how do you want me to speak? Like before coaxing you? Managing you. Spoiling you. Then watching you happily run back to the Harrisons to meet your fiancé. My heart pounded. I don't want to marry Ethan Sterling, but you can still marry someone else. His voice deepened, carrying a deeply suppressed emotion. Kylie Taggart. You've already left the Taggart family. I bit my lip. You're the one who pushed me away first. He was silent. I couldn't hold it in anymore. All the resentment from the past few months poured out. You called me Miss Harrison. You didn't reply to my messages. You drove Brooke Dalton home right in front of me. You knew I was deliberately saying I was going to a bar. Deliberately saying I had a date. And you still didn't care. My voice trembled. You weren't like this before. Jackson Taggart looked at me for a long time. Suddenly, he reached out, grabbed my wrist, and pulled me back towards the edge of the desk. My lower back gently hit the corner, and I was completely enveloped by him in an extremely close space. I looked up in alarm. What are you doing? His eyes darkened, his voice hoarse. Are you jealous? My face burned. Who's jealous? I'm just not used to it. Not used to what he pressed? Each word. Not used to you looking at other people. Not used to you driving other people home. Not used to other people calling you Jackson. The words burst out. And even I was stunned. Jackson Taggart squeezed my wrist tighter. Kylie. Do you know what you're saying? I looked into his eyes. My heart pounding so wildly it made my head spin. I don't know. I took a deep breath. My voice choked. I just know that those things used to be mine. In that moment, Jackson Taggart's eyes seemed to be set ablaze by something. He leaned down very close. So close I could smell mint on his breath. So close that if I stood on my tiptoes, my lips would brush his chin. A knock suddenly sounded on the door. Jackson. I brought you coffee. The door opened, and Brooke Dalton stood outside, holding a tray with coffee, her gentle smile freezing when she saw our posture. I startled, quickly pushing Jackson Taggart away. He let go very quickly, his face returning to its cold expression as if nothing had happened. Brooke Dalton stepped in, her gaze sweeping over my reddened wrist. Then she smiled. Kylie's here too. Perfect. My father wanted to invite Jackson to dinner tonight. I thought he was busy. Jackson again. Another familiar way of calling him. Jackson didn't deny it. He just said flatly, Yes, I'll be there tonight. I stood beside them, the earlier moment feeling like a joke. The gift box on the desk was silently pathetic. I picked up my purse, maintaining a calm voice. Well, I won't disturb you two then. If you don't need the gift, just throw it away. At the door, I stopped, turning to look at him. Happy birthday, Major Taggart. I didn't wait for his reply. As I left the office, tears immediately fell. I wiped them away fiercely, scolding myself for being so weak. It was just a gift that wasn't accepted. Just someone who used to be part of my past. But why did my heart ache so much after Jackson Taggart's birthday? I locked myself in my room for 2 days straight. Mrs. Harrison thought I was sick and kept sending up nourishing soups. Mr. Harrison thought I had finally come to my senses, and even specifically told my etiquette teacher to take a day off so I could adjust my mood. Only Willow, seeing me hugging a pillow and staring blankly out the window. Sehild. Kylie. Are you crying because of Jackson? I immediately turned my head and glared at her. Who's crying? I'm just allergic to life. Willow didn't expose me. Just gently placed a bubble tea on the table. Drink this. Ethan Sterling secretly bought it for you. He says a lovesick little devil needs a lot of sugar. I grabbed the bubble tea and took a big sip. The sweetness flooded my mouth, but my heart still ached. Tell me, if someone clearly despises me, why do they get angry when I get close to someone else? Willow blinked. Maybe he doesn't despise you. Then what is it? She hesitated for a moment, her ears turning slightly red. Maybe he likes you. I almost choked on a tapioca pearl. Jackson Taggart likes me. Don't scare me. He looks at me more like he's looking at a failing exam paper. Willow was about to say more when a knock suddenly sounded on the door. Mr. Jenkins stood outside, his face beaming. Miss Kylie, the General and Mrs. Harrison invite you downstairs to the living room. The Sterlings have just arrived. Today, the two families wish to discuss Miss Kylie and Ethan Sterling's matter in more detail. The bubble tea in my hand almost fell to the floor. Discuss in more detail what kind of discussion, Mr. Jenkins smiled kindly. I heard they want to set a date for the engagement. Engagement. The word hit me like a hammer to the head. Just as I was about to rush downstairs to protest, my phone in my purse vibrated frantically. It was Ethan Sterling. The moment I answered, his voice screamed as if his house was on fire. Kylie Harrison. Help. My parents are at your house. And they even brought a list of wedding gifts. Get down there and ruin it. I don't want to die young in a loveless marriage. I gritted my teeth. Do you think I want to? So, cooperate. Later. You just say you hate me. And I'll say I'm terrified of you. We'll unite to destroy this marriage. I glanced at Willow, who was standing beside me. Her face flushed at Ethan's voice over the speakerphone. I deliberately asked, You don't want to marry me. So, who do you want to marry? The other end of the line fell silent. A few seconds later, Ethan Sterling whispered, You already know. Why are you asking? I looked at Willow. She was blushing so hard she almost burrowed into the bubble tea. The irritation in my heart eased a little, at least in this chaotic mess. There was one couple who clearly liked each other. I pulled Willow downstairs, speaking into the phone. Okay, you act your heart out later. Don't let your parents sell you out. To my surprise, just as I reached halfway down the stairs, I heard the familiar sound of an engine outside the gate, a deep, decisive rumble. For some reason, my heart skipped a beat. The large living room door swung open. Jackson Taggart stepped in, his uniform impeccable, his shoulders still carrying the slight chill from outside. His handsome face was expressionless, but his dark eyes instantly silenced the entire room. Mr. and Mrs. Harrison stood up in surprise. Mr. Sterling quickly offered a diplomatic smile. Major Taggart. What brings you here? Jackson Taggart looked at no one else, his gaze piercing through the living room, landing straight on me on the stairs. Picking someone up. I stood frozen. Mrs. Harrison asked, perplexed. Picking up whom Jackson Taggart took one step after another to the foot of the stairs, looking up at me. Kylie Harrison. Come down here. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried an authority that brooked no argument. If it were before, I would have certainly obediently run down. But, thinking of Brooke Dalton, thinking of the birthday gift he left untouched, anger immediately surged. I clung to the banister, my face cold as I asked, Major Taggart, did you come to the wrong place? The Harrisons are discussing family matters. It doesn't seem to concern you. Jackson Taggart's face chilled another degree. He stepped up 2 stairs, directly grabbing my wrist. It concerns me. I struggled, but couldn't break free. And he pulled me down into the living room. Ethan Sterling sat on the sofa, eyes wide as he watched us, his mouth agape enough to fit an egg. Mr. Harrison frowned. Major Taggart. What is the meaning of this? Jackson Taggart pulled me to stand beside him, his hand still firmly gripping my wrist. I heard that the two families are discussing the engagement of Kylie Harrison and Ethan Sterling. Mr. Harrison said gravely. That's right. This is a private matter for the Harrison and Sterling families. It's no longer a private matter. Jackson Taggart looked straight at him. I want to cancel this engagement. The entire living room fell silent. Mrs. Harrison gasped, covering her mouth. Mr. Sterling's face changed color. Ethan Sterling secretly gave Jackson Taggart a thumbs up from a hidden corner, then quickly put his hand down when his mother glared at him. Mr. Harrison was furious. By what right do you demand the cancellation of this engagement? Jackson Taggart turned to look at me, his eyes very deep, as if something suppressed for too long had finally given way. As the man who wants to marry her, my mind exploded with a loud times bang. I turned my face to him, my throat dry. What did you say? Jackson Taggart didn't flinch. He squeezed my hand tighter. I said, I want to marry you. Mr. Harrison slammed the table and stood up. Nonsense. You two were brother and sister in name. Aren't you afraid of being laughed at for saying such things? She and I are not blood relatives. Jackson Taggart took a neatly folded stack of papers from his jacket pocket and placed it on the coffee table. This is the DNA test result from Central Military Hospital from 5 years ago. I've known for a long time. I stared at those papers, my blood turning to ice. 5 years ago, times, he looked at me. His voice lowered. The year you fell off your horse and lost a lot of blood? The hospital needed emergency blood tests for family members. That's when I discovered your blood type didn't match anyone in the Taggart family. I was stunned. I remembered that horse riding accident very clearly. When I woke up, the first person I saw was Jackson Taggart. He was sitting by the bed, his eyes red from being up all night. But the moment he saw me awake, he coldly scolded me for being recklessly daring. It turns out he knew even then. Then why didn't you say anything? My voice trembled. Jackson Taggart was silent for a few seconds. When he spoke again, his voice was noticeably hoarse, because I was selfish. The room was so quiet that everyone's breathing was clearly audible. He looked at me, each word heavy, as if falling to the bottom of his heart. I was afraid that if you found your real family, you would leave the Taggart house. Afraid you wouldn't need me to manage you anymore. I wouldn't need me to protect you. But in the end, you still left. And you were so happy you packed your bags right in front of me. My heart ached. So you deliberately acted cold towards me. If I didn't act cold, what was I supposed to do? His eyes darkened. Continue using the title of brother to keep you by my side, Kylie. I couldn't do it. The last sentence was very soft, but it was enough to make my eyes well up. Mr. Sterling on the side cleared his throat, trying to salvage the situation. Major Taggart, even if you and Miss Harrison are not blood relatives, the engagement between the Sterling and Harrison families has already been discussed. I cannot agree. I disagree. Ethan Sterling immediately jumped up. Mrs. Sterling was so angry she pulled his sleeve. Sit down. He gritted his teeth, then decisively pulled Willow, who was trying to hide behind me, forward. I like Willow. She's the one I want to get to know, not Kylie Harrison. Willow's face flushed all the way to her ears. The entire room was shocked a second time. Mr. Harrison covered his forehead. Mrs. Harrison looked confusedly at me, then at Willow, her expression as if she had just discovered her two daughters conspiring to turn her house upside down. Jackson Taggart paid no attention to the chaos on the other side. He leaned down to look at me. Do you want to marry Ethan Sterling? I shook my head very quickly. No. Then do you want to come with me? I looked at the hand gripping mine. The heat of his palm made my wrist tingle. I knew that if I nodded, nothing would ever be the same. But truthfully, from the moment I ran to the Taggarts because I heard he was on a blind date, nothing was ever the same. I took a deep breath. Yes, Jackson. Taggart's eyes softened in an instant. He pulled me closer beside him, then turned to Mr. Harrison. Mr. Harrison, I didn't come here today to force anyone. I just wanted to make my stance clear. No one else can decide her marriage for her. Mr. Harrison was so angry he choked on his words. Jackson Taggart continued. After I speak with my father, the Taggart family will officially come to the Harrisons to discuss everything. Until then, please don't arrange any more blind dates for her. After saying that, he took my hand and turned to leave. I was pulled along for a few steps, then suddenly remembered Ethan Sterling and Willow were still standing in the middle of the battlefield. I turned my head and mouthed to Ethan Sterling. Good luck. Ethan Sterling glared, mouthing back. Traitor. Outside in the yard, the cold wind blew, clearing my head a little. Jackson Taggart opened the car door for me. I didn't get in immediately but stared at him. Do you really want to marry me? He looked down at me. Yes. Not because I'm angry with Ethan Sterling. Not because it's a habit to manage you. Jackson Taggart sighed softly. He reached out, his thumb gently wiping away a tear I hadn't realized was falling on my cheek. Kylie, I love you. My heart stopped for a beat. He continued, his voice deep but firm. Not familial love. Not habit. It's the love of a man for the woman he wants to marry and bring home. My face flushed. I was so flustered I didn't know where to put my hands and feet. But what about Brooke Dalton Jackson? Taggart frowned. She and I have nothing. That day, I drove her home because I wanted to clearly end our meeting. I muttered softly. But you let her call you Jackson. The corner of his mouth curved slightly. That jealous, I immediately glared at him. Who's jealous? He opened the car door, leaning close, his voice hoarse with amusement. Okay, not jealous. I must have misheard. I blushed and slipped into the car. The military vehicle drove away from the Harrisonses. I watched the mansion recede behind us, feeling both scared and relieved. Jackson Taggart held the steering wheel, then suddenly said, "Come back to the Taggarts with me first." I startled. To see General Taggart, yes. I swallowed. "Will he hit you?" Jackson Taggart replied calmly. "Probably." I turned to him in alarm. But he looked very composed. To marry his precious daughter? A few lashes are worth it. I looked at his profile. My heart a mix of sour and sweet. Annoying. Jackson Taggart is truly the most annoying man on earth. But I guess I really can't bear to leave him anymore. Jackson Taggart drove me to the Taggart gate but didn't let me out. He unbuckled his seatbelt, leaned over, and ruffled my hair. "Go back to the Harrisons first." I immediately grabbed his sleeve. "No, I'm coming with you." "Kylie." His voice deepened. "Let me talk to Dad about this." I looked through the familiar large gate, my heart anxious. General Taggart truly loved me. But he had never been soft on Jackson. When I was little and Jackson let me climb a tree and scrape my knee, General Taggart made him kneel in the yard for 3 hours. Now, he was saying he wanted to marry me. If General Taggart heard about this, that yard would probably have another person kneeling. Jackson Taggart. "How about I talk to Dad first?" He looked at me. The corner of his mouth slightly curved. "How do you plan to say it?" I cleared my throat. "Practicing seriously?" "Dad. Actually, my brother and I aren't blood relatives. I think he's handsome, and he thinks I'm adorable. We're a match made in heaven. So please agree." "Dad." Jackson Taggart was silent for 2 seconds. Then he reached out and covered my eyes. "Just go home." I pulled his hand down, glaring angrily. "You think I don't say it well. You're afraid Dad will hit both of us." I was speechless. He called the Harrisons' driver to pick me up, while he walked into the Taggart house alone. Before leaving, I stuck my head out of the car window and called after him. "Jackson." His steps faltered. I gripped the car door tightly, trying to sound fierce. "If Dad hits you, you have to run. Don't just stand there and take it like an idiot." Jackson Taggart turned to look at me. The light from the gate fell on his shoulders, softening his cold face considerably. "Got it." He said got it, but I knew for sure he hadn't heard a word. That night, I lay in bed at the Harrisons, hugging my phone, waiting for a message until I almost crushed the phone case. 1 hour passed. 2 hours passed. The screen remained silent. I texted him, "How are things?" No reply. I texted again, "Did Dad hit you?" Still no movement. Close to midnight, my phone finally vibrated. Jackson Taggart. "I'm fine. Go to sleep." Just 4 words. "I'm fine." I stared at the message. The more I looked, the more abnormal it seemed. A normal person who was fine wouldn't text so curtly, like a battlefield command. But when I called back, he didn't answer. I tossed and turned all night. The next morning, the moment I arrived at school, I cornered Willow right outside the lecture hall. She hugged her books, and the moment she saw me, her eyes darted to the side. I narrowed my eyes. "What are you hiding from me?" Willow gave a strained laugh. "Nothing. You always fiddle with the corner of your book when you lie." She immediately hid her hands behind her back. Too late. I took a step closer, staring at her. "Did Dad hit him?" Willow's face went pale. "Jackson told me not to say anything." My heart plummeted. "Was it bad?" She bit her lip, her voice as faint as a mosquito's buzzing. "General Taggart used the discipline stick. Mr. Jenkins said he hasn't been able to get out of bed since last night. He won't even put on medicine." My head buzzed. "Cannot get out of bed. The discipline stick times the rattan stick wrapped in leather that hung in General Taggart's study. When I was little, just seeing General Taggart pick it up made me so scared I'd hide behind Jackson Taggart. Now, it had been used on him." I turned and ran straight out of the school gate. Willow called out in alarm behind me. "Kylie, what about class?" "Who cares about class?" Jackson Taggart is about to be beaten into a pancake. What else am I going to learn? I sped to the Taggart house faster than I ever had in my life. Mr. Jenkins's eyes reddened the moment he saw me. "Miss Kylie, it's good you're here. Master Jackson won't let the doctor examine his wounds. And he hasn't eaten anything. Please, go convince him." I said nothing, running straight up to the second floor. Jackson Taggart's door was ajar, and the faint scent of disinfectant wafted from inside. I pushed the door open. On the large bed, Jackson Taggart lay on his stomach, his upper body bare. The bandages wrapped around his back were already stained with blood, red streaks seeping through, making my eyes sting. Hearing the door, he frowned, his voice cold. I said no one needs to come in. Jackson. My voice trembled so much I could hear it clearly. His back stiffened. He turned his head and saw me standing at the door, his expression immediately changing. Kylie, why are you here? He propped himself up, trying to sit. I rushed over and pressed his shoulder down. Stay still. Perhaps it was the first time I'd commanded him in such a fierce voice. But Jackson Taggart actually froze. I looked at the bloodstains on his back, tears falling uncontrollably. You dare to text, I'm fine, fine like this. Jackson Taggart looked at me crying, a helpless expression on his face. It's just superficial wounds. Then get up and run 2 laps for me to see. He was silent. I snatched the medicine bottle from the bedside table, my hands trembling as I opened the cap. How many times did Dad hit you? Don't remember? Don't remember or don't dare to say, he gave a faint laugh. Do you feel sorry for me? I was so angry I wanted to strangle him. But looking at his wounds, I couldn't bring myself to touch him roughly. And you can still smile at a time like this. Jackson Taggart, you're truly insane. I carefully applied the medicine around the edge of the bandages. The moment I touched him lightly, his back muscles tensed. He was good at enduring pain, but his halting breath still gave him away. Anger flared within me. No way. I'm going to find Dad. Jackson Taggart immediately grabbed my wrist. Don't go. Let go. Kylie. He's angry. You'll only make him angrier. I turned to look at him, my eyes still red. He hit you like this. How much angrier can he get? Will he hit me too? Jackson Taggart squeezed my hand. I don't want you to be scolded. That sentence softened my heart in an instant. But then I got even angrier. He's beaten to this state, and he's still worried about whether I'll be scolded times? You idiot. I gently removed his hand, then leaned down and lightly kissed the back of his hand. Jackson Taggart froze, taking advantage of his distraction. I spun around and ran straight out. Behind me, his voice, strained with pain, called out, Kylie Taggart. I didn't turn back. He could scream himself hoarse. It was useless. I stormed straight to the military compound's command center. The guards immediately snapped to attention and saluted the moment they saw me. No one dared to stop me. Who on base didn't know I was the spoiled little darling raised by General Taggart since I was a child? I burst through General Taggart's office door with a bang. The man sitting behind the desk looked up, his thick eyebrows immediately furrowing. Kylie Harrison. What are you doing causing a ruckus? I braced my hands on the desk, my eyes red-rimmed as I looked at him. Dad, do you want to beat him to death before you're satisfied? General Taggart put down his documents, his voice stern. That defiant boy spoke out of turn. Was I wrong to teach him a lesson? Is his affection for you considered foolish? He choked, his face growing even more unpleasant. I went easy on him with those lashes. You're too young to know what love is. He raised you from childhood, yet dared to harbor inappropriate feelings for you. Those few lashes were me holding back. I bit my lip, then hit me. I like him too. I want to be with him too. General Taggart slammed the table and stood up. He seduced you into confusion. No, I looked up, each word clear. I chose to like him. I don't want him to go on blind dates with other people. I don't want him to marry other people. And I definitely don't want him to be beaten like this because of me, to the point he can't get out of bed. General Taggart's fierce demeanor paused for a moment. I immediately deployed my ultimate weapon. If you still object, from now on, I won't call you Dad anymore. His face changed. I sniffled. My voice choked. I'll call you that hateful old man. The office suddenly became strangely quiet. The corner of General Taggart's eye twitched. When I was 7, he punished Jackson Taggart by making him kneel because I fell out of a tree. I cried until my eyes were swollen, pointing at him and scolding him as that hateful old man for 3 days straight, refusing to call him Dad. He only promised not to punish Jackson without reason anymore, and I finally made peace. Now, those 4 words reappeared, their power undiminished. General Taggart massaged his temples. This girl, still using old tricks to threaten me. I pretended to wipe my tears. Anyway, you don't love me anymore? The Harrisons wanted to marry me off to Ethan Sterling. And you didn't care. Outsiders bullied me. And you didn't know. Only Jackson protects me. And you hit him. My life is just miserable. General Taggart immediately caught the key point. The Harrisons wanted to force you to marry whom I blinked. Adding fuel to the fire, Ethan Sterling, a spoiled rich kid with a poisonous tongue, who called me uncouth, said my hands had calluses, and even said he'd have to re-educate me on proper manners after we got married. General Taggart's face darkened inch by inch. There was such a thing. I nodded vigorously. And at the party, those socialites called me a country bumpkin in a silk gown. The Harrisons only scolded me for embarrassing them. No one asked if I felt wronged. Slam. General Taggart slammed the table, his commanding officer's aura erupting, making me a little nervous. He picked up his phone and dialed. The moment the other end connected, he said coldly, "Mr. Harrison, I handed Kylie back to your family not so you could force a marriage. And certainly not so that she could be bullied by outsiders. Cancel the engagement with the Sterlings immediately. I will personally come over to discuss this tomorrow." I don't know what the other side tried to explain, but General Taggart wasn't listening. The Taggart family raised that girl for 18 years. Before she found her biological family, she was my treasure. After reuniting with the Harrisons, she is still my treasure. Who wants to bully her? They first have to ask if I agree. I stood beside him, my nose stinging. General Taggart hung up the phone and turned to look at me. "I can stop objecting to you and Jackson's matter now?" My eyes lit up. "Really?" he snorted coldly. "But if he dares to make you cry, I'll break his legs." I immediately wrapped my arms around him. "Dad, you're the best." General Taggart stiffened for a few seconds, then finally sighed and patted my back gently. "All right. Now go see that boy. If he knows you came here and caused a ruckus, he probably won't stay in bed." I let go of him and ran off. Behind me, I heard General Taggart sigh, raising two demanding children. Indeed. I ran out of the command center, feeling as light as if I had won a great battle. Jackson Taggart, you owe me a huge thank you. No. A spicy hot pot dinner too. General Taggart said he would no longer object. But that didn't mean Jackson Taggart was immediately off the hook. He still had to lie on his stomach in bed to recover from his injuries. And I officially became a frequent visitor at the Taggart house. The Harrisons initially wanted to intervene, but General Taggart personally called and said, "Kylie misses home. Just let her visit." Do the Harrisons really want to forbid her from seeing the man who raised her for 18 years? Mr. Harrison was speechless. Mrs. Harrison, however, was soft-hearted, only reminding me to be careful on the road and not to cause any more trouble. I nodded obediently when I heard that. Whether I caused trouble or not depends on whether other people behave themselves. For several days, as soon as school ended, I would rush to the Taggart house. Mr. Jenkins was happier to see me than he was to see a doctor. He quietly slipped a box of medicine into my hand, his eyes pleading as if entrusting me with the fate of the family. "Miss Kylie, Master Jackson won't change his bandages. Please, convince him for me." I held the medicine box, bursting into the room with surging confidence. Jackson Taggart was leaning against the bed, reading documents, his face still a little pale. But his cold demeanor hadn't diminished one bit. Seeing me, he closed the file. "School's out." I tossed my backpack onto the chair and walked straight over, snatching the file from his hand. "Patients aren't allowed to work." He raised an eyebrow. "You're managing me." I opened the medicine box, smiling very kindly. "Didn't you say you wanted to marry me? So, from now on, you're under my provisional management." The corner of Jackson Taggart's mouth curved very slightly. "So, what does my provisional manager plan to do? Take off your shirt." The moment I said it, I realized it sounded a bit improper. My ears burned. I quickly corrected myself. "I mean, to change your bandages." His gaze fell on my face, carrying a faint, amused glint. Change bandage." I gritted my teeth. This man, he got beaten. And he's still this annoying. His wounds looked better than the day before, but the lash marks were still frighteningly dark red. As I applied the medicine, I scolded General Taggart for being too harsh. Jackson Taggart said nothing, just tilted his head to look at me. What are you looking at, my fiancé? My hand trembled, almost pressing too hard on the wound. He winced slightly. I immediately felt guilty, but my mouth was still stubborn. Who's your fiancé? The Harrisons haven't agreed yet. My father agreed. What good is your father agreeing? A lot of good, he said slowly. He's already started picking a date to go to the Harrisons to claim you. My face flushed so hard I wanted to wrap my head in a bandage. The atmosphere was gradually becoming strange when light footsteps echoed outside the door. Mr. Jenkins knocked. Master Jackson, Miss Dalton has come to visit you. My smile immediately vanished. Jackson Taggart frowned. I'm not seeing her. Mr. Jenkins hadn't even had a chance to reply when a gentle female voice drifted from the hallway. Jackson, I just brought you some porridge. I heard you were hurt. And I was so worried. I set the medicine bottle on the table. Slowly turning to look at the door, Brooke Dalton wore a light blue dress. Her hair cascaded softly over her shoulders. And in her hands, she carried a bowl of hot white porridge. Her elegant and delicate appearance was indeed very easy to evoke pity. Unfortunately, I wasn't people. I just felt an itch in my hands. Brooke Dalton saw me in the room, her expression faltering slightly before she quickly smiled. Kylie's here too. I stood by the bed, arms crossed, looking at her. Not here, was I supposed to be hiding under the bed? Her smile stiffened a little. You're still as humorous as ever. You too. Still coming into an unmarried man's room without an invitation. Brooke Dalton's face paled slightly. Jackson Taggart said coldly, Mr. Jenkins, show her out. Brooke Dalton quickly took a step forward. Jackson, I know you're angry, but my father and General Taggart have been friends for many years. You don't need to be so heartless over a few misunderstandings. I tilted my head. A few misunderstandings. Are you talking about those few sentences where you were telling everyone you were about to become a Taggart daughter-in-law? She immediately looked at me, her eyes showing a hint of hurt. Kylie, you misunderstood me. I was just concerned for Jackson as a childhood friend. Childhood friend? I let out a laugh. A childhood friend who casually calls him Jackson, casually brings porridge to his room, and casually stands here to teach me about misunderstandings, Miss Dalton. Does your family teach social boundaries? Brooke Dalton's eyes reddened from my provocation. She turned to look at Jackson Taggart, her voice trembling. Jackson, I really was just worried about you. Kylie is young. I don't blame her for being rude. She doesn't need your blame. Jackson Taggart spoke flatly, and she's not young. Brooke Dalton stiffened. I immediately curved my lips, feeling so satisfied I wanted to applaud. She looked at me, a flicker of resentment in her eyes. Very quickly. At that moment, no one was in the hallway except Mr. Jenkins, who stood a distance away. Brooke Dalton suddenly took a deep breath. Her voice choked. Kylie, if you don't like me, I'll leave. But I cooked this porridge all morning. It would be a shame if he didn't eat it. Before she finished speaking, her hand suddenly tilted. The hot bowl of porridge spilled directly onto her dress and arm. Ah! A piercing shriek filled the air. The porcelain bowl crashed to the floor, shattering. Brooke Dalton clutched her reddened arm, tears immediately streaming down her face. Kylie, why did you do that? I just wanted to give Jackson some porridge. I looked at her, stunned for a second. Then I laughed. Bravo. This acting is worse than my fake stomachache to skip drills when I was 10. Mr. Jenkins outside the door gasped. His face changed color, and he rushed over. What happened? Brooke Dalton cried, her face tear-streaked. It's nothing. Mr. Jenkins, it was my fault for not being careful. Kylie didn't mean to push me. One sentence, complete with both witnesses and physical evidence. I nodded approvingly. That's right. I pushed her. Brooke Dalton froze. Mr. Jenkins was also stunned. Jackson Taggart looked at me, his eyes slightly moving. I walked over, directly grabbed Brooke Dalton's unburned wrist, and pulled her to stand in front of Jackson Taggart's bed. Jackson, I just spilled porridge on Miss Dalton. The reason is she said she wanted to be the future lady of the Taggart household, and told me I should know to keep my distance from you. Brooke Dalton's eyes widened. You're lying. I never. You've already started the act. So play it all the way through. I turned to look at Jackson Taggart, deliberately jutting out my chin. You handle it. If you think I'm wrong, scold me. If you think she's pitiful, call a doctor for her. Anyway, the porridge is spilled, and the play has begun. Jackson Taggart propped himself up, trying to sit. I immediately forgot my anger. I quickly pressed his shoulder. Lie down. Your wounds aren't healed yet. Don't move. He didn't listen. Just grabbed my hand and pulled me close. His gaze swept over me from head to toe. Are you burned? I blinked. My hand isn't burned. I obediently held out my hand. He checked carefully, after confirming I hadn't gotten any porridge on me. He looked up at Brooke Dalton. All the gentleness he'd shown earlier vanished completely. Comrade Dalton. His voice was so cold it made the air feel like it was freezing. Don't come to the Taggart house anymore. Brooke Dalton stood rigid. Jackson. Clearly I'm the one who's hurt. You hurt yourself. What does that have to do with her? Her face turned white. Jackson Taggart continued. I've made it very clear to you and Colonel Dalton. There's no possibility between us. You call me by my first name. You show up uninvited in my room. Now you're pulling a stunt to frame someone. Out of respect for our family's acquaintance. I won't press charges. But if there's a next time, I'll handle it my way. Each word fell, crisp and sharp. Brooke Dalton trembled as she looked at him, tears falling harder. You're treating me like this because of her. Jackson Taggart gripped my hand, pulling me to sit on the edge of the bed beside him. She's the woman I want to marry. If not for her, then for whom my heart pounded. Someone was clearly crying in front of us, but I couldn't help but smile. Brooke Dalton looked at our clasped hands, the gentleness on her face finally cracking. She bit her lip, then turned and ran out of the room. Mr. Jenkins immediately instructed someone to clean up the broken porcelain and see her out. The room returned to silence. I turned to look at Jackson Taggart, trying to appear calm. You really believed me, he raised an eyebrow. You admitted you spilled the porridge. So you're not mad, you don't think I was being aggressive. He reached out and gently tapped my forehead. If you don't get aggressive when someone's bullying you, then what did I raise you for 18 years to do? My chest warmed. I lowered my head, muttering softly. But I really didn't spill it. She poured it on herself. I know. I looked up sharply. You know, Jackson Taggart pointed to the corner of the wall. My room has security cameras. Dad installed them after you climbed through the window to sneak cake and fell. When you were 12, my face burned. Why are you still remembering bad things from ages ago? I remember everything about you. That soft sentence made my heart melt. I looked at him, suddenly finding the man in front of me annoyingly irresistible. Annoying for always being strict. Annoying for deliberately pushing me away. Annoying because with just one sentence, all my resentment would vanish. I leaned down, quickly kissing the corner of his lips. Jackson Taggart froze. I immediately jumped up, pretending to calmly put away the medicine box. Reward for good behavior. His voice deepened behind me. That's all. I turned my head and glared at him. Patients should know when they have enough. He chuckled softly, his deep laugh falling on my ears and making them burn. Outside the door, Mr. Jenkins, who had just returned to report that the cleanup was finished, saw the scene and quietly backed away. Even thoughtfully closing the door, I pretended not to see him. Jackson Taggart did too, but the atmosphere in the room seemed to be hotter than that bowl of porridge had been. After the hot porridge incident, Brooke Dalton vanished from the Taggart household. I originally thought she had finally learned her lesson, but Ethan Sterling, upon hearing the story, gave a knowing, cynical laugh. You're too naive, Kylie. People like that don't just disappear. They're probably at home crying to their dad, preparing to call the higher-ups. I bit my bubble tea straw, narrowing my eyes at him. Sounds like you're an expert. Did you do that a lot as a kid? Ethan Sterling choked, then turned to whine to Willow. Willow, she's attacking my character. Willow blushed, softly replying, Ethan, don't provoke Kylie anymore. I looked at the two of them, mockingly saying, all right. Don't be so lovey-dovey in front of us, lonely people. Or I'll tell General Taggart that Ethan Sterling is bullying me again. Ethan Sterling immediately sat up straight. Please, little queen, have mercy. I want to live to see my wedding day with Willow. Mentioning wedding made my fingertips tingle. These past few days, the Taggart family had begun preparations to officially visit the Harrisons to discuss my and Jackson Taggart's future. Mr. Harrison still outwardly acted standoffish. But after General Taggart's phone call, his objections had considerably weakened. Mrs. Harrison secretly asked me if I truly liked Jackson Taggart. I blushed and didn't answer. She looked at me for a moment, then finally sighed and patted my head. As long as you don't regret it, that's all that matters. Everything seemed to be going smoothly, but life never let me enjoy a lazy, carefree existence for more than 3 days. On Friday afternoon, as soon as school ended, I happily took a cab to the command center, intending to bring Jackson Taggart a fresh box of chestnut cake I'd just bought. But the moment I stepped into the lobby, before I even had a chance to show off the cake box, Sergeant Miller rushed out from somewhere and pulled me into the corner of the staircase. His expression was so grim, I almost thought General Taggart had beaten Jackson again. Kylie, listen to me calmly. I immediately tensed. What happened to Jackson? Sergeant Miller looked around, lowering his voice. There's an anonymous complaint in the military compound, aimed directly at Commander Taggart. My heart sank. A complaint about what they're saying. Commander Taggart used his position as a major and the influence of the Taggart family to force the Harrisons to cancel their engagement with the Sterlings. They also claim your and Commander Taggart's relationship was improper from the start, seriously damaging the honor of a military officer. My ears rang. Sergeant Miller continued, his voice even lower. The complaint has already been sent to the disciplinary board. If it's confirmed, at best, it's suspension and investigation. At worst, it's dishonorable discharge. Even court-martial. The box of cake in my hand almost fell to the floor. Dishonorable discharge. Court-martial for Jackson Taggart. That wasn't just his job, it was his entire honor. Built with blood, sweat, and discipline over so many years. I gripped Sergeant Miller's sleeve. Who did it? He pursed his lips. No conclusion yet, but everyone in the military compound knows Colonel Dalton has been very unhappy with the Taggart family recently. Brooke Dalton left the Taggart house crying the other day, and the rumors started spreading the next. Brooke Dalton, I gritted my teeth. She couldn't win against me in front of Jackson Taggart. So she's attacking his career. How dirty. I turned, intending to run to his office. But the moment I stepped out of the corner, I bumped into a familiar chest. The cold scent of mint enveloped me. Jackson Taggart looked down at me, one hand steadying the falling cake box, running where I looked up. Seeing his calm face, the panic in my heart intensified. Jackson, you know about the complaint, don't you? He glanced at Sergeant Miller. Sergeant Miller immediately stood at attention, his face innocent. Boss, I was just updating the family on the situation, Jackson Taggart said flatly. If you're so free, lead the team for 10 extra laps tonight. Sergeant Miller groaned tragically. Boss, I haven't even eaten yet. Perfect. You'll enjoy your food more after a run. Sergeant Miller backed away, groaning, prioritizing romance over comrades. Indeed, Jackson Taggart ignored him, taking my hand and walking out. I was pulled along for a few steps, anxiously asking, where are we going? To eat. I widened my eyes. You can still eat at a time like this, if I don't eat. Do you plan to stand here and cry for the entire command center to see I was speechless? Sergeant Miller, from behind, weakly raised his hand. Boss, can I tag along? I'm starving from fright too. Jackson Taggart didn't turn his head. Go run. Sergeant Miller's wails of protest were left behind. Half an hour later, the car stopped in front of a high-end seafood restaurant. Jackson Taggart pulled out a chair for me, ordering a table full of my favorite dishes: steamed crab, boiled shrimp, grilled scallops, seafood soup, even chestnut cake for dessert. I looked at the overflowing table, my stomach clearly rumbling, but my heart remained heavy. I can't eat. He scooped a bowl of soup and placed it in front of me. Eat first. You need strength to scold people. I held the spoon, my eyes still fixed on him. This is very serious. Isn't it? Jackson Taggart picked up a shrimp, calmly peeling it. Serious for those who aren't prepared. You mean you are prepared? He placed the perfectly peeled shrimp into my bowl. Colonel Dalton thought he was filing a complaint against me. In reality, I've been waiting for him to expose himself for a long time. I was stunned. You've been investigating him? Yes. Because of Brooke Dalton. Not entirely. Jackson Taggart wiped his hands with a napkin, his voice calm. For the past 2 years, the 3rd Division's logistics have been consistently problematic. Supply shortages, substandard medical equipment, all traces led back to Colonel Dalton. We just didn't have enough solid evidence to bring him down. I looked at him, my initial anxiety turning to shock. So this complaint is an opportunity. His eyes turned cold. He offered his head on a platter. Of course. I'll take it. I suddenly felt that the man in front of me was like a large wolf, calmly sharpening its claws. Brooke Dalton and her father thought they were hunting him. But they didn't know their prey had already dug a trap, just waiting for them to fall in. The worry in my heart eased a little. But I quickly remembered something else. I looked at the pristine shrimp in my bowl. Jackson Taggart had just peeled the shrimp for me. His movements meticulous and familiar. Just like the day he peeled shrimp for Brooke Dalton at the dinner party before. The old jealousy, which had been suppressed, suddenly surged like a jar of old vinegar being opened. I put down my spoon, waved to the waiter, and ordered 3 extra pounds of boiled shrimp for the table. The waiter froze. Jackson Taggart also looked up. Are you going to eat all of it? I crossed my arms and looked at him coldly. Don't you love peeling shrimp? Peel to your heart's content today. If I can't finish it, I'll give it to the stray cats outside the school. He looked at me for a few seconds, then slowly curved his lips. The little vinegar jar has spilled again. My face flushed. Who's jealous? Not jealous. But you remembered me peeling shrimp for someone else for so long. I was so angry I wanted to use a crab claw to pinch him. And you dare to bring that up. Jackson Taggart chuckled softly, pulling the bowl of shrimp in front of him. I did it on purpose that day. I was stunned. I wanted to see if you cared. But then, seeing you upset. I wasn't happy either. I opened my mouth and bit the shrimp, eating it while glaring at him. You deserve it. Yes, I deserve it. He accepted the blame very naturally. From now on, I'll only peel for you. Hearing that, the corner of my mouth couldn't help but curve. But I still tried to maintain a serious expression. Those 3 pounds can't go to waste. Understood. He rolled up his sleeves and began diligently peeling shrimp. An ordinary man peeling shrimp would just be peeling shrimp. Jackson Taggart peeling shrimp was like assembling and disassembling a weapon. His movements were neat, focused, and so aesthetically pleasing that I watched, forgetting all about the complaint. After the 10th shrimp, I finally remembered the main issue. When is the hearing Monday? Can I attend, Jackson? Taggart looked up. You want to go? Of course. I bit my chopstick, gritting my teeth. I want to personally see Colonel Dalton and his daughter humiliated. Dare to touch what's mine, do they think I'm dead? Jackson Taggart's eyes suddenly softened. Yours, I froze, having spoken without thinking. But now that it was out, I couldn't back down. I jutted out my chin. That's right. Do you have a problem with that? He placed the freshly peeled shrimp into my bowl, his voice deep, carrying a hint of amusement. I wouldn't dare. I'm honored. I lowered my head and ate the shrimp, my ears burning. Outside the window, the city lights shimmered like fallen stars. A storm was brewing very close. But this time, I wasn't scared anymore, because I knew Jackson Taggart wouldn't fall, and if anyone truly wanted to bring him down, I would stand by his side. And together, we would fight back to the very end. At 9:00 a.m. sharp on Monday, the internal disciplinary hearing opened in the military compound's large conference room. I sat in the spectator section, my hands on my knees, my back so straight that if my Harrison etiquette teacher saw me, she would surely shed tears of emotion. Not because I had suddenly matured, but because I was nervous. Across from me, Jackson Taggart sat primly in his impeccable uniform, his collar crisp, his military medals gleaming coldly, his face as calm as if he were attending a commendation ceremony. Not being accused, General Taggart sat at the head of the table, his expression stern, his sharp eyes sweeping across the room. Colonel Dalton sat on the left, a barely concealed smirk on his face. Brooke Dalton wasn't allowed in the room. but I guessed she was somewhere outside, waiting to see Jackson Taggart lose all his honor. A disciplinary officer finished reading the contents of the complaint. The conference room was so quiet you could clearly hear the rustle of papers. Colonel Dalton stood up first, adjusting his collar, his voice full of self-righteousness. Comrades, the military has its discipline. Major Jackson Taggart is a respected young officer, and he should have maintained an even cleaner record. But he abused his position as a major and his family's influence, interfering with the Harrison family's engagement, forcing the Sterlings to cancel the marriage. He paused, his eyes deliberately sweeping over me. Not to mention the relationship between him and Miss Kylie Harrison, who were formerly brother and sister in name. If this matter gets out, how will the public view our military? Several people in the room whispered softly. My hands clenched. Sergeant Miller, sitting one seat away from me, whispered, "Don't be scared. If Commander Taggart makes a move, that old fox will be crying too late later." I glanced at him. "If you whisper like that and get caught, we'll both be running 10 laps. Sergeant Miller immediately sat up straight, his face righteous, as if he had never spoken. Colonel Dalton was still rambling. Therefore, I propose that the disciplinary board conduct a thorough investigation and not go easy on him just because he is General Taggart's son. General Taggart looked at him coldly. Colonel Dalton, this is a disciplinary hearing, not a lecture hall. Get to the point. Colonel Dalton's smile stiffened slightly. Jackson Taggart finally stood up. He buttoned his uniform, his movements unhurried, yet sharp. Reporting to the board, I would like to present my counter-argument. His voice was steady, neither fast nor slow. He took a file from his briefcase and placed it on the table. First, regarding my relationship with Kylie Harrison, this is the DNA test result from Central Military Hospital from 5 years ago, proving that she and I have no blood relation. After her true identity was revealed, she returned to the Harrison family. Her household registration has also been adjusted according to regulations. The documents were passed to each member of the board. An old general wearing glasses finished reading, then nodded. No blood relation. The law does not prohibit marriage. Jackson Taggart continued. Second, regarding the accusation of forcing the Sterlings to cancel the engagement, he took out his phone and connected it to the loudspeaker in the room. I have an audio recording, voluntarily provided by Ethan Sterling himself, the alleged victim. Immediately after, Ethan Sterling's voice filled the room. Hello, sirs and madams of the disciplinary board. I am Ethan Sterling, the only son of the Sterling family. I swear on my entire collection of sports cars that the cancellation of my engagement with Kylie Harrison was completely voluntary. No one forced me. I never wanted to marry her. I like Willow Harrison. Truly like her. Furthermore, Kylie Harrison is so fierce that Commander Taggart taking her off our hands is something the Sterling family is truly grateful for. The conference room fell into a strange silence. 3 seconds later, someone cleared their throat. Sergeant Miller buried his face, his shoulders shaking with silent laughter. I sat in my seat, my face burning with anger. Ethan Sterling, that big mouth, he's finished. Once we're out of here, I'll definitely show him what truly fierce means. Colonel Dalton's face was slightly pale, but he still argued. An audio recording can be manipulated. The Sterling family might have been pressured into saying that. Jackson Taggart looked at him, his gaze very cold. Then, Colonel Dalton, please provide evidence to prove that I used my authority to pressure the Sterling family. Colonel Dalton choked. He only had a complaint and a few rumors. He had no real evidence, but he still tried to maintain his composure. This matter requires further investigation. Indeed, it does require further investigation. Jackson Taggart placed a thicker file on the table, but not an investigation into me. The atmosphere in the room abruptly changed. Colonel Dalton looked at that file, the smile on his face slowly disappearing. Jackson Taggart opened the first page, his voice as cold as a knife blade drawn from its sheath. For the past 2 years, the 3rd Division's logistics have been consistently problematic. Supply shortages, substandard medical equipment. Some equipment purchased with military funds had declared prices 30 to 40% higher than market value. He pushed the file towards the board. The person directly approving these items is Colonel Dalton. Colonel Dalton's face turned ashen. He jumped up. You're slandering me. Jackson Taggart remained unmoved. The file contains copies of contracts, bank statements, testimonies from 2 suppliers, and camera footage recording your aide receiving cash at the Minerva Hotel on the 17th of last month. The whispers in the conference room immediately grew louder. General Taggart picked up the file and read it, his face growing colder and colder. Colonel Dalton staggered half a step, his lips trembling. This is a fabrication. You're making this up to retaliate for Brooke and to frame me. Jackson Taggart smirked slightly. Colonel Dalton, if I wanted personal revenge, you wouldn't be sitting here today listening to me read out each point. The Inspector General's team has already arrived at your office. The conference room door opened precisely then. An officer stepped in, bowing as he reported, General, the Inspector General's team has just sealed Colonel Dalton's office. Inside, his safe. They found a significant amount of unexplained cash and records of transactions with contractors. Colonel Dalton slumped into his chair. All his initial arrogance shattered. General Taggart slammed the file onto the table. Colonel Dalton, do you have anything else to say? His lips moved. But in the end, no words came out. Jackson Taggart stood tall in the middle of the conference room, his voice clear. I request the board to publicly investigate the entire matter. If I have engaged in any abuse of power to force a marriage or violated any regulations, I am prepared to accept all penalties. But if this complaint is an act of slander intended to divert a corruption investigation, I also request the board to handle it strictly according to military regulations. His words fell, and no one refuted them. I looked at his back, my heart pounding fiercely. This man was annoying, cold, often managed me, and liked to provoke me until I jumped. But when he stood there in his military uniform, using his calm voice to dismantle someone else's conspiracy, I suddenly felt my eyes sting. This was Jackson Taggart, the man I once wanted to run from, and the man to whom, no matter how far I went, I still wanted to run back. The hearing concluded after nearly 3 hours. Colonel Dalton was taken in for investigation on the spot. The complaint against Jackson Taggart was determined to lack evidence and was instead transferred to investigate the acts of slander and personal motives. Brooke Dalton stood in the hallway, her face pale as she watched her father being led away. She turned to look at Jackson Taggart, tears immediately falling. Jackson, this is a misunderstanding. My father surely isn't Jackson Taggart. Coldly cut her off. Comrade Dalton, please show some self-respect. Brooke Dalton froze. He took my hand right in front of her. His voice, not loud, but clear enough. My fiancé doesn't like hearing that. My face flushed. Brooke Dalton looked at our clasped hands, her expression a mix of humiliation and despair. She wanted to say something else, but Sergeant Miller quickly stepped in front of her. Miss Dalton, this area is not convenient for lingering. Please leave. Brooke Dalton bit her lip, then finally turned and ran away. I watched her retreating back, feeling little pity. You choose your path. You live with the consequences. Outside the building, the bright afternoon sun shone down on the military compound. I looked up at Jackson Taggart. You knew you'd win from the start, didn't you? He looked down. Not certain. I was surprised. Then why were you so calm? Jackson Taggart reached out and adjusted a strand of hair blown by the wind near my cheek. Because you were watching. My heart trembled slightly. He continued. If I panicked, you would be scared. That soft sentence made my heart melt into a tangled mess. I lowered my head, muttering softly. Actually, I wasn't that scared. Really, you were just a little worried I'd be dishonorably discharged. Or taken to court. And then you'd have to break me out of jail. Sergeant Miller, standing behind us, almost choked on his water. The corner of his mouth curved. You went to all that trouble thinking that I jutted out my chin. Of course. Who dares touch what's mine? Jackson Taggart's eyes darkened for a fleeting moment. He squeezed my hand tighter, his voice deep. Remember that? Remember what? That I am yours. My face burned. Sergeant Miller immediately covered his eyes. In broad daylight? Can you two have some mercy on a single comrade? Jackson Taggart glanced at him. Are this month's training reports submitted? Sergeant Miller immediately ran off. Never appeared. Goodbye. I couldn't help but laugh. Jackson Taggart looked at me, his eyes softening. Let's go. Go, where, home. He paused. Then added, to prepare the wedding gifts. I froze. Then my face flushed so hot I didn't dare to look at him anymore. His hand held mine very tightly. This time, I didn't pull away. After the hearing, the Dalton family went completely silent. Brooke Dalton no longer appeared in front of me. Colonel Dalton was under investigation, and the rumors in the military compound quickly vanished like foam. Jackson Taggart was still Jackson Taggart. His uniform was crisp, his face as cold as stone, and wherever he went, people instinctively stood straighter. Only I knew that this cold man had recently grown fond of holding my hand when no one was looking. In the Taggart hallway, he held my hand. In the car, he held my hand. Even when I was eating chestnut cake, he had to pull one of my hands into his palm as if he was afraid I'd sprout wings and fly away the moment I blinked. I once seriously protested. Jackson, do you know my hand isn't a dog leash? He looked at me. You're much better behaved than a dog. I grabbed a piece of cake and shoved it straight into his mouth. Be quiet. He bit the cake, the corner of his mouth curving very slightly. General Taggart saw everything, only snorted coldly, then turned away. But that night, I heard Mr. Jenkins say he had called the Harrisons, suggesting the two families share an intimate dinner that weekend. Intimate was just code for discussing the wedding. Hearing that, my heart pounded all night. Mrs. Harrison was so excited she made me try on 5 dresses. Mr. Harrison still outwardly pretended to be reluctant to give away his daughter. But after hearing that the Taggart family's wedding gifts included several properties, stock shares, and a pile of rare valuables, his expression noticeably softened. I watched him read the list of gifts over and over, and couldn't help but lean in and whisper, Dad, honestly, marrying me off to Jackson Taggart isn't a bad deal. Later, when you're at social events, just say your son-in-law is Major Taggart, a young officer with a bright future, and your prestige will instantly rise 3 floors. Mr. Harrison paused. A few seconds later, he folded the gift list, clearing his throat. I'm not the kind of person who chases after vanity. Yes, Dad, you're just rationally considering the family's interests. He glanced at me. This girl, she hasn't even married yet, and she's already defending her husband's family. I hugged his arm, giggling. I'm just defending myself. If you don't agree, I'll have to run away from home again. And that's a hassle. Mr. Harrison glared at me, but the corners of his mouth clearly turned up. That weekend, the family dinner was held at a very private restaurant. The Taggart, Harrison, and Sterling families were all present. I initially thought the atmosphere would be so formal that I'd need permission to swallow my food. But as soon as we sat down, General Taggart and Mr. Harrison began toasting each other like long-lost friends. Mr. Sterling smiled so much his eyes narrowed, continuously praising Jackson Taggart for his talent at such a young age. Mrs. Harrison pulled Mrs. Esterling's hand, talking about dresses, invitations, and guests, at such a fast pace that I felt dizzy just listening. Jackson Taggart sat beside me, calmly picking food into my bowl. Eat a lot. I looked at the pile of meat and fish in my bowl, softly asking, Are you trying to fatten me up before the wedding? Yes. You wouldn't dare. Yes, he looked down, his voice very soft. You've gotten thinner. I'm not used to seeing you like that. I immediately shut up and ate. Annoying? Who can argue with statements like that? Times the dinner was peaceful until Ethan Sterling suddenly jumped up. His chair scraped backward with a harsh sound. The entire table turned to look. He gripped Willow Harrison's hand tightly. His face flushed, but his voice was very loud. General Taggart. Mr. Harrison. Mom and Dad. Since everyone is here, I'd like to say something. I bit my chopstick, immediately having a bad feeling. Willow, embarrassed, pulled his hand. Ethan. Ethan Sterling looked at her, his eyes suddenly very serious. I want to say this properly. He turned back and took a deep breath. I like Willow. It's not a fleeting thing. And it's not because I want to avoid marrying Kylie Harrison. I genuinely want to be with her. And I hope the elders will approve of us getting married. The atmosphere at the table froze. Mr. Sterling, upon hearing this, was so delighted he almost clapped his hands. Mrs. Sterling covered her mouth and smiled. She had clearly been waiting for this for a long time. Mr. and Mrs. Harrison looked at each other, their expressions a bit complex, but they didn't object immediately. Only General Taggart set his wineglass down with a thud. Absolutely not. Ethan Sterling was so scared his shoulders trembled. General Taggart. Is there something wrong with me? General Taggart snorted coldly. You still ask, Kylie told me. You're a spoiled rich kid who changes girlfriends like clothes, has a poisonous tongue, and bullied her at the Harrisonses. How can I entrust Willow to someone like you? The entire table fell silent. Ethan Sterling slowly turned to look at me, his eyes full of both injustice and resentment, as if he wanted to shoot arrows through my forehead. I guiltily lowered my head and ate my vegetables. Oh no. Back then, to get General Taggart on my side, I think I smeared Ethan Sterling a bit too much. Willow also turned to look at me, softly saying, Kylie. I cleared my throat, immediately standing up to mediate. Dad, there's a slight misunderstanding here. Ethan Sterling isn't actually that bad. General Taggart narrowed his eyes. Not bad, then who was crying and saying he called her uncouth and wanted to re-educate her on proper manners? Ethan Sterling was so angry he almost jumped up. That was wrong of me to say, but I apologized afterward. Besides, I've never changed girlfriends like clothes. I never even had a girlfriend before Willow. He grew more and more indignant as he spoke. Kylie Harrison. You're ruining me. I gave a strained laugh. Friends. Ruining sounds a bit dramatic. At most. I just added a little artistic flair. General Taggart glared at me. You dare to lie to me. Seeing the situation turn sour, I immediately retreated behind Jackson Taggart. Not lying. I was going through emotional trauma at the time, so my descriptive abilities might have been a bit flowery. General Taggart rolled up his sleeves. Come here. I hugged Jackson Taggart's arm tightly, peeking out half my head. No way. Dad, you're being aggressive. And I'm still scared. In a critical situation, I quickly clutched my stomach, a pained expression on my face. Dad, don't shout so loud. You're scaring your future grandchild. The entire dinner table looked as if struck by lightning. Mrs. Harrison's teacup fell onto her saucer. Mr. Harrison choked on his wine, his face turning red. Mrs. Sterling's mouth hung open. Ethan Sterling stared at my stomach, his expression as if he had just seen me turn into a monster. Even Jackson Taggart beside me stiffened. He slowly leaned down to look at me, his eyes so dangerous, my scalp tingled. Kylie Harrison. I swallowed. Oh no. I played dumb and lost. I quickly let go of my stomach. Giggling. Future grandchild, I meant the distant future. Very distant. Right now. It's still waiting in line for reincarnation. Not even its turn yet. The air froze for 3 seconds. Then General Taggart sighed, both angry and amused, pointing at me. This girl. She'll give me a heart attack sooner or later. Mr. Harrison clutched his chest. Kylie, is this something to joke about? I meekly lowered my head. I was wrong. Ethan Sterling, still not forgetting the main issue, immediately took advantage of everyone's confusion to pull Willow forward. General Taggart. I truly am not the kind of person Kylie Harrison described. I can write a commitment letter. From now on, if I ever make Willow sad, I'll voluntarily hand over all my cards, cars, and stock shares. And I'll accept the punishment of running laps around the base. General Taggart frowned. You'll run, Ethan Sterling gritted his teeth. How many 10 laps? General Taggart gave a cold laugh. So weak. And you want to marry my daughter? Ethan Sterling was almost in tears. 20 laps. Jackson Taggart interjected flatly. 30? Ethan Sterling turned sharply to look at him. Major Taggart. Do you have to take advantage of a burning house to loot it? Jackson Taggart replied calmly. Training the future brother-in-law's physique. I snorted with laughter. Willow also couldn't help but curve her lips. General Taggart looked at the two of them, their hands clasped, and finally snorted. You want to marry Willow, fine. Starting tomorrow, run with the guard team at the base every morning for a month. If you can persevere, we'll talk more. Ethan Sterling's face turned white, but he looked at Willow, then gritted his teeth and nodded. Okay, I'll run. Mrs. Sterling was so touched, she wiped away tears. Mr. Sterling patted his son's shoulder, his expression like a general sending a soldier off to battle. I looked at Ethan Sterling, finding him rarely more agreeable, at least for Willow. He truly dared to risk his spoiled rich kid life. The party then became much livelier. The two families began discussing whether they could hold a joint wedding. Mrs. Harrison and Mrs. Sterling grew more and more excited. Mr. Harrison calculated the guest list while drinking. General Taggart outwardly complained about the hassle, but the corners of his mouth never dropped. I sat beside Jackson Taggart, quietly sighing, thinking I had escaped a difficult situation, but then he suddenly leaned close to my ear. Future grandchild. His hot breath on my ear made me tremble. I pretended not to hear, lowering my head to pick at my food. You threatened Dad like that, I blushed, softly retorting, I was just improvising. His voice was chillingly calm. Tonight, I'll improvise with you too. I almost dropped my chopsticks. I turned to look at him. That man was still sitting primly, his face cold, as if discussing military affairs, only his hand under the tablecloth, gripping mine, was so hot it made my heart pound. I gritted my teeth, softly saying, Jackson Taggart, you've learned to be bad. He curved his lips. My fiancé taught me well. I couldn't argue with that. Outside the window, the city lights shimmered like fallen stars. Inside the room, the adults were laughing and talking about the wedding. Willow blushed, listening to Ethan Sterling's vows, while my hand was firmly held by Jackson Taggart under the table. Everything that had once been tangled like a ball of yarn clawed by a cat suddenly found its ending. I glanced at his profile, thinking to myself, if my lazy, carefree life absolutely must have someone managing it, then Jackson Taggart isn't so bad after all. After all, he manages me very annoyingly, but he also spoils me very well. My wedding to Jackson Taggart was decided in an evening full of laughter, clinking glasses, and Ethan Sterling being forced by General Taggart to accept a running schedule. What I didn't expect was that the wedding would eventually include Willow, Harrison, and Ethan Sterling. Mrs. Harrison said, the more the merrier. It'll be even better with double happiness. Mrs. Sterling was so happy she hugged Willow, repeatedly calling her her precious daughter-in-law. Mr. Harrison initially wanted to maintain his dignity, but after hearing General Taggart mention inviting several high-ranking military guests, he immediately cleared his throat, seriously saying, the children truly love each other. We adults shouldn't stand in their way. I watched him, my shoulders shaking with laughter. Mr. Harrison glanced at me. What are you laughing at? Nothing. Dad, I just think you're truly enlightened. He gave a soft but the corners of his mouth were already curved. The wedding day arrived faster than I expected. The hotel booked 3 floors for the reception. The red carpet outside stretched so far, I suspected walking its length would burn off half a wedding cake. On one side, the dignified military elite, uniforms crisp, standing as if ready for a parade review. On the other, the wealthy business class, stunning suits and gowns, their social chatter outshining the crystal chandeliers. And I, the first bride, sat in the waiting room in a mermaid wedding dress as heavy as armor. Willow Harrison sat beside me, wearing a pure white princess gown. So beautiful she looked like a crystal doll. I leaned my head on her shoulder, sighing tiredly. Willow, I was wrong. Being lazy. I shouldn't have such a grand wedding. I should have just dragged Jackson to the courthouse, then gone home to sleep. Willow giggled at my words. If Jackson heard you say that, he'd probably just carry you directly to the aisle. Before I could answer, the waiting room door cracked open. Ethan Sterling, in a white tuxedo, poked his head in, sighing in relief when he saw me sitting properly, as if he had just escaped danger. Thank goodness you're still here. I thought you'd climb out the window and run away, and Major Taggart would have to come drag you back at gunpoint. I slowly looked up. Ethan Sterling, today's your happy day, so I'll give you 3 seconds to rephrase that. He immediately dodged behind the door. I just wanted to thank Commander Taggart for being such a hero, helping a little devil like you leave, and bringing peace back to humanity. I grabbed my dress and jumped up. You're dead meat. Ethan Sterling turned to run, but the moment he did, he crashed into a tall, broad chest. Jackson Taggart stood outside the door, wearing a white formal military uniform, the medals on his chest gleaming coldly. His posture so straight that the entire hallway seemed to brighten. I looked at him, my anger immediately vanishing. Annoying. Why are you so handsome today? Jackson Taggart glanced at Ethan Sterling. Want to run 30 laps in your groom's suit? Ethan Sterling immediately raised both hands in surrender. No way. I'm going to find my wife right now. He dragged Willow away faster than the wind, leaving only Jackson and me in the room. He walked up to me, leaning down to adjust a slightly crooked veil in my hair. Nervous, I pouted. This dress is too heavy. I suspect it wants to assassinate the bride. He chuckled softly. I'll carry you later. In front of so many people, yes. Aren't you afraid of losing face? Jackson Taggart looked at me, his eyes so gentle they made my heart melt. With you as my wife. What do I need face for? I was speechless, my face flushing, only able to pretend to adjust my dress. The ceremony began to the sound of soft music. Mr. Harrison walked me down the aisle. The man who once prioritized family reputation above all else had red eyes today. He placed my hand in Jackson Taggart's, whispering, "Take good care of her." Jackson Taggart squeezed my hand. "I will spend my entire life taking care of her." Mr. Harrison nodded, turning away quickly as if afraid I'd see his tears. Beside him, General Taggart watched the scene, unable to hide his smile. When it was Willow Harrison's turn to walk up with Ethan Sterling, he still tried to maintain a dignified expression, but the corners of his eyes had softened. The two couples exchanged rings under the crystal chandeliers. When Jackson Taggart leaned down to kiss me, applause erupted throughout the ballroom. His kiss was very light, just a fleeting touch on my lips, but it was enough to make my heart pound wildly. After the wedding reception, I was so tired I didn't want to move. Jackson Taggart, true to his word, carried me straight up to the bridal suite on the top floor of the hotel. The moment he set me down on the bed, I immediately kicked off my high heels. Flopping onto the mattress, I finally survived. He took off his formal uniform jacket and hung it on a chair, then sat down beside me. His hands patiently removed each hairpin, each heavy piece of jewelry from my head. The air in the room grew quiet again. His breath was very close, carrying a faint scent of wine. My heart suddenly started beating faster. Jackson Taggart finished removing the last clip, braced his hands beside me, and leaned down to look. Now, about that future grandchild. Shall we? I immediately pushed his chest with both hands. Don't bring that up again. I was just improvising that day. He caught my hands, lightly kissing my lips. But Dad heard it. He misheard. He heard it very clearly. My face flushed. I quickly changed the subject. I told you before. Marrying you means I get to be spoiled, throw tantrums, spend all your salary, and make you suffer. You're not allowed to change the script. Jackson Taggart chuckled softly, leaning down, his voice deep and husky in my ear. My salary has been submitted to you, and I am yours too. How do you want to torment me? I'll listen. Before I could bask in triumph, he added, but tonight, let me collect a little interest first. His kiss descended, gentle, yet inescapable. I wrapped my arms around his shoulders, feeling both embarrassed and sweet to the point of alarm. After marriage, my lazy, carefree life officially began. No more intensive etiquette classes, no more terrifying blind dates, and no one dared to say I wasn't a proper lady. Jackson Taggart spoiled me so much that General Taggart would just shake his head. If I wanted spicy hot pot, he'd take me. If I wanted to sleep in, he'd draw the curtains completely. If I wanted to buy a bag, he'd hand over his card. The consequence was that at the end of the semester, I brought home a bright red failing grade. Jackson Taggart held my report card, his face as dark as the bottom of a pot. Kylie Taggart. I was sprawled on the sofa, eating potato chips, and the moment I heard his voice, I immediately slid to the floor, hugging his leg and fake crying. Hubby, the professor is so boring. The words in the textbook just put me to sleep. You just married me and you're already scolding me. Has our love faded? He rubbed his forehead. You only attended 3 classes all semester. 3 classes is still an accomplishment. Your essay was blank. Minimalism. You say Jackson Taggart laughed, frustrated. So, what are you going to do now? I blinked, drawing out my words. Hubby. He looked at me for a few seconds, then finally sighed and sat down at his computer. What's the topic? I immediately scrambled up, hugged his neck, and gave him a loud kiss. My hubby is the best. Jackson Taggart looked helpless, but the corners of his mouth curved up. A few days later, I caused an even bigger problem. A pink package, which should have been sent home, somehow ended up being delivered to Jackson Taggart's duty station. He brought the box home and placed it firmly on the coffee table. Kylie, what did you buy? I opened it, instantly dumbfounded. Inside was a pure white bunny pajama set with a fluffy round tail. I forgot to change the address. I'm done for. Jackson Taggart's ears were slightly red. His voice gritted through clenched teeth. Sergeant Miller and the entire reconnaissance team saw it. I tried to suppress a laugh, putting the bunny ears on my head. So, do you like it? His eyes darkened. I wiggled the fluffy tail, and tiny bells tinkled. If you don't like it, I'll return it. A second later, he swept me into his arms. Don't return it. What are you doing? It's broad daylight. Jackson Taggart carried me towards the bedroom, his voice hoarse. Send me the link. I'll buy more. The bedroom door closed. My cries for help muffled inside. My lazy, carefree life after marriage was truly glorious. Except this lazy fish had been well fed by Jackson, and he watched over me so closely I had no room to run. But, oh well, to have someone who lets me be spoiled, throw tantrums, spend money, cause trouble, and then stands behind me to clean up all the messes. A life like that isn't so bad. After all, the person who truly loves me will tolerate all my careless and thoughtless actions. And Jackson Taggart, he not only tolerates me, he willingly becomes the place where I can be rebellious my entire life.